Hello everyone and welcome to this very special Norwich Science Festival at Home event. We have been very excited all morning. Just a few messages. You can join in on the live chat, so if you're logged into your YouTube account, please do join in. We'd love to hear your questions, your comments, and Professor Ben Garrod and Dr Jess French will be here to answer your questions throughout the event. So do enjoy, and remember, if you're doing your Youth STEM Award, watching this activity counts towards that, so make sure you log it. So I'm now going to hand over to Ben and Jess. Enjoy.
Good afternoon, everybody. As Natalie said there, thank you for joining us today on this autumnal Sunday afternoon where normally you'd be ready to have your Sunday lunch right now, I guess. Whereas today, you need to put it on hold just for a little while. Or maybe, I don't know, maybe you could have your Sunday lunch whilst watching this, Jess. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I mean, if you're a vet, if you're going to be a vet, I know there's plenty of potential vets watching, you need to get used to being able to look at body parts whilst you eat. So.
Absolutely. Now, we put a little bit of a competition or a little bit of a quiz online earlier this week to see which animal you wanted to see being dissected. And for those of you who chose the American alligator, well done. That's what we've got in front of us today. We've got this beautiful, big, adult female American alligator. Obviously, she's no longer alive. She is dead. Now, I need to get over a couple of things very quickly. Not everybody likes the idea of an animal being dissected. This animal is from a British zoo. It was very, very kindly donated to us. We're not going to say which zoo it was from because we want to maintain anonymity a little bit there. Now, whether you like zoos or not, we're not really going to get into that today. But what we can say is that the opportunity to have this wonderful predator in front of us, to really explore the anatomy, the behavioral adaptations, and the ecology, gives us this unique position. There are very, very few people out there watching today who've seen anything like this before. How many of these have you done before?
I've had a quick look inside one crocodile, and that's it. That's the only experience I've had.
Well, Jess, I can tell you that in all my experience, I have dissected 0 crocodiles or alligators before, so we are all learning today as well. If you don't like it today, if you find this offensive, then you don't have to watch, but we will be maintaining the respect for this animal all the way throughout. We have vet students across the UK watching today. We have a colleague of mine, Dr Will Nash, who'll be coming in a little bit later to do a mini lecture for some university students for next week as well. So this is a really wonderful education opportunity. Now, after we finish with this big girl today, she'll be off to Scotland for the collection at the National Museum of Scotland, where her body parts, her bones, her DNA will all be used for ongoing research as well. So even though she's sadly gone, she will help education and research for generations to come. So, couple of house rules. First of all, if you're watching this and you're about this sort of high or this high or this high or this high, that's great, but please make sure an adult is around as well, because we don't want you watching things that mum and dad and granddad don't know you're watching. So please go get a parent or other guardian to make sure they're watching with you. There won't be sprays of blood and guts today. It's not like that. Without an active heart beating, you're not going to get blood pumping, so it's not going to be as gross as you might imagine. It will be fun, it will be interesting though. And also, we will be using very sharp knives today, so it might sound obvious, but please do not go and use sharp knives yourselves. And if mum, dad, or any other parent or guardian allows you to, make sure you have parental supervision. Is that everything?
I think so, yeah. And just to add about her, about this specimen that we have here, she's had a lovely long life as well, and she died completely naturally. So, you know, she's just come here at the end of an incredible life, and we're just really grateful now that we're able to use her to learn more. And definitely for vets out there, looking inside an animal is one of the best ways to know how to fix them. So, you know, we have to know how normal animals work so that we can work out when something's going wrong, what we need to do to get them back to that normal. So it is really, really important, even though, you know, it seems a bit weird sometimes to some people who love animals so much, who want to be vets. You know, the thought of cutting up an animal at first can be strange, but actually it's an incredible way for us to be able to help more animals in the future.
Absolutely. But you love animals. Do you prefer dead animals or live animals?
Obviously, I love animals alive, you know.
Same here.
But I have, in my veterinary experience, had to look inside the bodies of many dead animals to see how they work. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to fix them when there's a problem. It's like, you know, seeing a car, how it's working when everything's going right. You need to know where everything fits so that when something's broken, you know how to make it better.
And we both know where she's from, and we trust the place that has donated. We wouldn't take an animal that we didn't think had good welfare or the way it was treated. We're very happy that this, as Jess said, this animal's had a very long and very happy life. And throughout the next 3 hours, we can help explain why we know she was healthy, why we know she was happy. The very fact she was this big, and trust me, she's quite heavy, the very fact we know that tells us she was happy. She wasn't too fat, she wasn't too thin, she wasn't stunted in her growth. She was a big, happy girl and lived a very long time. Yep. So, shall we start?
Yes, absolutely. Well, first of all, before we look inside, I think we should just have a look at the outside of her body.
Absolutely.
So, should we start at the head end?
Yeah.
Great. So, the first thing you notice when you look at an alligator is the shape of it, right? So, it's this long, flat shape, which is, well, do you want to tell us why it's evolved to be that shape?
Well, first of all, we have 24 or so living members of the crocodilian group today, and that includes the crocs, the gators, the gharials, and their relatives, and caiman as well. So they're all through the tropics. They're in some of the more temperate regions. And they all have that wonderful, lovely body plan. You don't get
very
square
similar,
crocodiles.
aren't they?
Yeah, they're all very, very... If you really quickly saw something walking towards you in the shadows and it was long tail, that very particular walk, you would go croc, or maybe gator, or you wouldn't think it's a lion, would you?
And that body plan has existed for a long time. It's been really successful, and they've kept that body plan. So it obviously works, doesn't it?
Quick quiz. Do you prefer dinosaurs or crocodiles? Who were the toughest animals? Who were the coolest?
Who are cool? They're not the same question. There's who was the toughest and who was the coolest. I don't know, maybe they were both. I think they were toughest and the coolest, actually.
Okay. Who were more successful?
Well, these ones are still here, aren't they?
That is true. I've just been told we've got viewers right from Norfolk, right into Italy and Canada already. So if you're joining us from Canada and Italy, welcome. I love my dinosaurs.
Yep.
I'm not going to lie, I do love the idea of a Spinosaurus walking towards us. Not now, but at some point. These things were there before the dinosaurs. Now, this particular species, the American alligator, we've got evidence they went back as far as between 7 and 11 million years. The modern crocodile group went back as far as nearly, we think, around about 100 million years, so well before T-Rex. But the Crocodiliomorpha group, the group to which they belong, like their cousins and their ancestors, go back 235 million years.
Insane.
Triassic.
Absolutely
The Triassic
crazy.
period. And over that time, they've changed very little. There was the very first one was Carniflex, which was this two-legged running croc-like ancestor.
Which is quite different, really.
Quite scary.
To be,
but as you say, most of this group look like that. They've got a plan, a body shape, and it works. Now, these are
they're doing something right, aren't they?
And they actively walk, they actively swim, they're ambush hunters, they are perfectly adapted.
And they're experts in two worlds, on land, in air, and underwater. You know, they're amazing.
But that's really hard, isn't it? I mean, a shark hunts in the water. I'd be terrified of a great white coming after me in the water. If it was on a beach, I'd probably get this close, really. And vice versa. I mean, a lion probably wouldn't get this close on land, but in water, I could probably outswim a lion in water. I wouldn't want to be facing one of these either.
Anywhere.
No. But that's really hard in evolution. That means they've got a lot of adaptations which allow them to do both, doesn't it?
Incredible.
Shall we start with the head then? Let's go.
Yes. So, let's talk a little bit about that living underwater. So, most of the time, when you find one of these American alligators, sometimes they'll be sunbathing, but often you find them submerged in water. That's where they spend a lot of their time sort of hanging out. And when you look at the head, they're perfectly adapted to that. They can lay almost completely flat in the water because the only things that need to be out in the air are these three things here. The nostrils, and the eyes and the ears to a certain extent also need to be out of the water, but they obviously can go underwater. Really, all they need is to be able to breathe air. So they can lay up to here, and if you look at the top of that, I mean, seeing this section in water, it's really good camouflage, isn't it?
And they don't live in beautiful, clean water like
No.
a swimming pool. It's quite
No.
murky, and these blend in beautifully, don't they? So you'd be walking, imagine, on holiday in Florida, walking the Everglades. What a beautiful place. And you see
Beautiful.
3 little dots almost in the water. I wouldn't immediately go, alligator.
No. They're really, really good at camouflage. I mean, they just look like logs floating in the water, really. The only time that it is easier to see them, and actually it's why they end up, is how they hunt them, is they shine torches, and then at the back of the eye is a reflective membrane. So at night, that's how you can see them, by shining a torch. So unfortunately for them, we have a way of seeing through that camouflage at night time. But if you are one of their prey animals that doesn't have a torch, you're just going to think it's a log, aren't you?
Yeah.
So they have these nostrils here, which is essentially their scuba equipment.
Right.
That's like the top of the tube sticking out of the water. And we'll talk a little bit more about how that works when we look at the holes inside the mouth. And everything else is right on the top of the head. So the ear flaps are in there, everything right on top of the head. And they can close them, they can close it all. They can close the nostrils completely, make them watertight. They can close the ear flaps completely, no water can get in there. And then even in the eyes, so the eyes are quite sunken, obviously because it's dead.
Yeah, the eyes are sunken because it's dead and because she's starting to dry out a little bit.
Yes,
But usually
exactly.
they'd be quite vibrant eyes,
Yes,
wouldn't they?
yeah, and they have those vertical pupils. But they also have, so they can shut the ears and the nose, and then they can also essentially shut the eyes. Well, they can wear goggles. They have built-in goggles, which are these third eyelids here. So they can close that over the eyes, and then the water doesn't affect their eyes. It's like having goggles.
Now, reptiles and birds all have this third
Yep.
eyelid, this third
Yeah.
membrane, don't they? Which we've lost in our
Yep.
ancestry, but that's a shared characteristic, and that
Yep.
allows them either to not get dust in there, it protects
Yep.
them from prey when they're eating them, or it allows them to see it as like us, a visor, but they can use
Yeah,
their
yeah.
visor underwater, can't they?
Yeah.
It's very cool.
Now, actually, it's quite cloudy. You can see it's not perfectly clear, which would probably suggest to you that they don't use their eyesight as their primary sense underwater. And it probably wouldn't make much sense for them to be using their eyesight as their primary sense underwater, because like you said before, the water where they live, it's not a swimming pool, it's not beautiful clear water. Actually, most of the time, there's probably been lots of the soil at the bottom has been sort of mixed up, and it's quite cloudy, really.
Yeah.
So they have these incredible sense organs, which are unique to the crocodilians. What did you call them? Crocodilomorphs.
Yep.
Crocodilomorphs. And they are these integumentary sense organs, ISOs they're called. So these little dots here, now they're a bit like the lateral line in a fish. Basically, they can feel lots of things. They can they think they might be able to tell how salty the water is.
Right.
And they can also feel vibrations. And that is probably how they find their prey underwater. So
This is already, I'm going to put myself in the minds of about 1,000 young viewers right
Yeah.
now who are going to say, seals have these wonderful big whiskers
Yeah.
to hunt underwater, like we get off Norfolk coast
Yeah.
here, at Horsey.
yeah,
Great white sharks have those wonderful ampullae lorenzini,
Yeah.
these little sensory pits as well. These are completely different, aren't they?
Completely
But they serve the
different.
same function, right?
yeah, yeah.
So it's a different way of
doing the same thing.
nature
Yeah.
trying to find a solution to this wonderful
Yeah.
issue of how do you hunt in murky water
Yeah.
when your eyes are closed?
Amazing. And alligators, they just have them around their heads, but the crocodiles and the caimans, they actually have them all over their body. So they can feel with their whole body what's going on in the water around
So that
them.
some of these relatives can actually feel something come from behind, whether it's a larger predator, not many things larger than her, but when they're small, or they can hunt prey as well, can't they?
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely amazing.
Do we know how old she was?
Well, we don't know exactly how old she was. We know she was at least 70.
Mm-hmm.
She's been to a few different places. So before the zoo that we got her from, she was in a different zoo. She came actually from America in the first place. So at least 70, but probably older.
And that's a typical age for an adult crocodile, isn't it? And that's what we said earlier, how we know she was healthy and how she had a happy life. If she was 20 or 30,
Yeah.
there'd be more of a problem. If she's
Yeah, yeah,
at
yeah.
least 70,
Yeah.
I mean, that's...
And actually, she was adult the first records that we have of her, 70 years ago, she was an adult then. And it takes them a long time.
Yeah.
You know, it could take them 20 years
Yeah.
to become an adult. So she could be 100, you know.
So she could have. We've got a granny alligator here.
Oh yeah, granny gator.
So I do actually have my granny watching today, and my granny's a little bit older. Sorry, Nan, but some similarities. But how much does she weigh? Do we know that? It's about 70 kilos, isn't it?
Yeah.
So again, we see this thing called sexual dimorphism. So the boys and the girls, the males and the females, are slightly different from one another. So I was reading that the males do get bigger in the alligators, don't they? So you can hit 200 kilos, maybe even a bit more.
Can you imagine?
Not really. But then we see things like salties, so the saltwater
my
crocodiles.
goodness,
They're nearly twice this length, whereas the females are bigger in that species. So we see differences between the males and females as well. But for this particular one, this is about the average size, the average weight of a big, healthy female, isn't it?
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Big enough, really, isn't it?
She is big enough. She really is. Yeah, I wouldn't want to meet her if she was alive in the water still.
What is the expected lifespan of crocodilians? So that is, we actually don't know that well because a lot of the ones that we have in zoos, you know, they're getting really old, but the records only go back probably about the age that she is now. So we know they reach at least these ages, but maybe older. And in the wild, we don't have heaps of records, so that probably is about average. I'd say probably about 90, but I don't think we have. Do you know?
No, and that's what I was about to say. Is we're getting lots of questions coming in today. If you have any questions, please send them in. That was from Joyce. So how big or how old do they live in both captivity and the wild? This is again why Jess was saying it's so important to work with captive species from zoos and other collections because we get this wonderful data. We can, if we suddenly found that all the crocodiles in the wild were dying after 30 years, is that good or bad? We don't know. But because we can look at this, and animals like this, we can really explore that research a bit more, can't we?
Absolutely, yeah.
Now, unlike, and I have finished growing. Upwards at least, maybe not out, I don't know. But I'm never going to get any taller than this, sadly. These are different, aren't they? They grow all through their lives. So we can get a sense of, if we know that she was between 70 and 100 and she's this length, again, this will help us understand how big you can expect wild caught animals to be as well. Now there might be, as Joyce mentioned there might be differences between captive and wild animals. And we see that with things like primates as well, don't we? We see that quite often. You get different longevity, so how long an animal will live.
And actually with the really long-lived animals, you know, we don't even really know those differences yet because there haven't been the long-term studies in the wild studying the same individuals for such a long period of time. And, you know, some of the animals in zoos haven't been in zoos for that long, so...
Yeah, so the answer is we don't know. But it's one of these things that, again, like we said, if you like zoos, if you don't like zoos, they're still very important to ongoing research, and lots of zoos now do work with conservation scientists and researchers around the world. So, as we said earlier, she, after this, will be, we call rendered down, so her bones will be cleaned, the samples will be taken for genetics and to look at her family tree, her phylogenies, and actually we can look at growth rings in teeth, we can look at growth patterns in bones, can't we? So this will help further our understanding in the long term. So Joyce, if you come back another 50, 60 years, we'll still be here, bend over this table doing dissections, but we'll have a better understanding of how long crocodiles live and their relatives, both in the wild and in captivity.
Yeah, and actually, if there are any crocodile or alligator experts watching, and you know the answers to any of the questions that we don't know the answers to, neither of us are crocodile experts. I'm a vet, but I'm a dog and cat vet. I occasionally do some zoo work, but I'm not an expert. So if you know, send us the answers.
Absolutely,
also.
let us know. I've got another question. How big can they get? This is about as big as you get for a female, isn't it? Yeah, so that's a good question.
Oh, should we measure her?
Should we measure her? No, I don't know how long she is at all. Do you want to? If I start right at the tip of the tail. Well, you go the head then.
It's not going to be...
So this goes to 152 centimetres there. And 152 plus 96.
So 2.5 metres.
2.5 metres, yeah.
Wow.
That's. I think they can get
Maybe 3.
Tiny, well, female's just under 3,
Yeah.
so she's almost as big as you can get, and they can get about 100 kilos, so she was almost as big as you can get in the wild.
And as she was getting old, she might have lost some condition as well, so she might have been, in her prime, a bit heavier than that also.
Yeah, but happy, big female. Again, the ones that hit nearly 3 meters and that weigh 100 kilos are record-breaking animals, aren't they?
Exactly,
They're always
exactly.
lions that are bigger or chimps that are bigger, whereas this is a very typical size for a big female. I keep patting her, partly because she feels so beautiful, but also it's really solid.
Yeah, so we could talk about that here. These, do you know what these are?
These are scutes or osteoderms, aren't they?
Osteoderms, yeah. So she's actually got bone in her skin.
So I love my words where they come from. So osteo, bone, derm, like dermis, skin. So bone skin.
Yeah,
so
bone skin. She has bone skin.
That's very cool. And you can hear.
I know, it's amazing. And I always think that, so I obviously do a lot of work about invertebrates. I'm Mini Beast girl. And
is that your superhero name, Mini Beast girl?
Mini Beast girl, yeah. Forgot my cape today though.
Fair enough.
But these guys almost have an exoskeleton, don't they?
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
We talk about exoskeletons for mini beast invertebrates, but then you say that you get so big you can't sustain one. They've got their real skeleton, their bone skeleton, but they've got this external one as well. Now, why does she need an external body of armour?
So I was trying to look into this a little bit recently, actually. And obviously there's not much that's, like we said earlier, there are not many things that are predators of these guys. Whether evolutionary, like a long time ago, well, obviously there were bigger things, so whether they've just stayed from then. They also have other roles, so they play a role in heat exchange. Obviously these guys, they can't make their heat for themselves. They get their heat from external sources, so to help warm them up and cool them down. There's also some evidence that maybe they can use the calcium that's in that bone there for various processes that are going on in the body. Maybe when they're laying eggs, they need calcium in the eggshells. But it's kind of an not completely known area.
That's quite cool, isn't it? I think so often we talk about science, everyone knows the answer to everything in science. We don't, do we? There's so much we still don't know. So I've also read that, as you said, with the egg absorption, a lot of these animals will, in quite cool areas, will sit in frozen ponds or streams or lakes for months, and they can reabsorb that calcium from here, these extra supplies, so they don't lose their skeletal mass as well, which is so cool. And I guess in the same way that some animals alive today, like sawfish, have these huge long rostrums with these big sort of teeth-like projections, they adapted to defend themselves against Spinosaurus. The Spinosaurus is gone, but sawfish have still got these adaptations. But you're right, it might be an adaptation from tens of millions of years ago to fight off bigger predators when these were small by comparison. We've got some more questions. How long can they hold their breath underwater? From Jim's daughter. Jim's daughter, we will answer that one a little bit later because we could tell you now, we're going to show you how we know that when we flip her over and have a look inside. We've got another one. Jessie, is it easy to determine the sex?
So as Ben said before, the size is quite a giveaway in American alligators. There is also another way you can tell. Probably we'll get to that later as well. And it involves a bit of poking about. So just from looking at them, it's the size. But apart from that, externally, they look the same, just smaller.
Okay. Cool. Shall we have a look inside yet?
Let's just quickly look at the teeth.
Oh, go on. Yes.
So crocodile teeth, unlike us, we have our baby teeth. They fall out. We get our other teeth. And then if they fall out, we're not like that. We don't get any more. But these guys, they replace them again and again. Probably once a year, they'll, on average, get a new set of teeth. They have a full set of teeth when they're born. They look roughly the same, and they just keep replacing them. They get broken. Obviously, they do quite a lot of fighting with their prey. They get broken really quite easily. And I was trying to take one out because they don't really have roots in the same sense that we do. So I thought they might be quite, but I just couldn't do it.
Now I get quite nerdy about this. Two different types of dentition, so two different types of tooth.
Okay.
So it's homodont and heterodont dentition.
Yep.
So we've got heterodont dentition. We've got very
all different shapes.
Nippy teeth at the front, quite flat. We've got little canines, but our primate ancestors had much larger canines, like a baboon. And then you get these big, crushing cheek teeth.
Because we're doing different things with our mouth.
We can chew, can't we? We chew, and we very rarely
we need
chew.
To bite the section and then chew it.
Yeah, we very rarely just bite into something and just.
I mean, I have seen you eat sometimes.
But that's,
so.
I get hungry, Jess, all right? But we have the teeth that allow us this really lovely chewing system.
Yeah.
These homodonts, so homo meaning same and dont mean
Yeah.
teeth, so same teeth all the way through their body. There's a few examples like that. So most of the sharks are like that. The sperm whales and other toothed whales and the crocodilians all have this same dentition or the same types of teeth around. Now, it looks a really good adaptation, but as you said, if we can chew, because we've got lots of different teeth that nip and grab, and they don't chew.
They don't chew anything, no, they just swallow it down, and we'll see some more adaptations to that as we go through the body. But yeah, and then musculature as well doesn't allow them to chew. So they have huge muscle bodies here. Which allow them to snap shut. You know, that's sort of the classic thing we think of when we think of crocodiles and alligators, is that snapping of the jaw, isn't it? And they can shut with a tremendous bite force. What did you say it was a minute ago?
I was looking to this earlier, and when we bite, we measure it in newtons, so it's a measure of force.
Yeah.
When you bite onto something really hard,
Yeah.
it's about 1,500, 1,200 maybe newtons.
Yeah.
When this bites down, it's 13,000 newtons.
Ow.
Well, there's a lot of argument between this and the salties. The salties about 16,000, but there are some people who still say this was measured once to have slightly more. I don't know. It's one of, if not the strongest bite forces in nature.
Yeah.
We can do a little experiment as well. If you pretend your hands are crocodiles for me, go on. And is that how you'd bite? That's it. You've got that lovely huge amount of force, but when you're closed in,
shut, actually.
you can't now open your arms, can you? Because your muscles on your back are really, we've evolved for a brachiating ancestor, something that would swing. We've got these really strong muscles here. And it's the equivalent here, isn't it? They've got these massive mousetrap-like muscles that allow that snap.
And even on a microscopic level, the fibres within the muscle are different. So they're fast twitch muscles. They can generate this incredible explosive force that slams it shut. But actually, they don't have very much force opening again. So when you're doing veterinary work with crocodilians, obviously if you want to avoid being snapped, but if the mouth is shut and you manage to get something around it, even just masking tape, no, not masking tape, what's the other one called? Duct tape, will keep it shut. They can't open through that despite having the incredible force in the other direction.
So some of our muscles are actually stronger than alligators, aren't they? So if we have a quick look at home...
We could hold that shut.
Yeah, it's amazing to think with such a powerful animal you can keep her mouth closed. But if we look at home and you touch either side of your jaw and clench your teeth, if you feel your cheeks, you can feel these big masseter muscles. These are the ones that help us chew and close our mouths. That's what she's got, isn't it? These huge masseters here.
But the ones that join from the top?
Yeah, so we've also got different ones as well, that they're much more advanced, they're much more developed than hers. If you feel from the top of your head down to the side, and just roughly behind your eyes, above your ears, and you clench your jaw again, you can feel something pushing at either side of your head. That's these big temporalis muscles, which
and
are really
they're kind
allow
of equal in us.
And they allow us to open our mouths and
open
close
and
our
shut,
mouths.
and to talk as well.
Yeah, so she's got much larger masseters than she has temporalis.
But so she has these huge, huge muscle bodies down here. But the ones that are up here, they're just tiny little bands. And there's very little force that they can generate. So she generates that huge force to shut her mouth and hold on to them with these sharp teeth as well. And then they can't rip chunks out by chewing. They have to pull with their whole head. So they use sort of the neck muscles, which are also huge.
They're huge, aren't they? They're absolutely, I mean, from above you can see here these massive muscles at the side here.
And that's because every meal for them is a fight. And this is where the strength comes from, to keep whatever it is that's thrashing about, say an antelope or hopefully not a human, but all sorts of huge animals that they grab hold of, and they hold on to it until either they pull it underwater and it drowns, or there have been, I don't know if you read about this, but there have been cases where they cooperatively feed. Have you seen that as well?
Yeah, there's a lot of work going into that recently, isn't it, where they think there's because that links into this idea that they've got tiny brains and they're idiots.
Yeah.
It's not true, is it?
Well, they do have small brains.
That's true.
Yeah.
But they're not idiots, are they? They're capable. We've seen a lot of behaviour in more recent research where people are looking at cooperative behaviour, at very particular hunting adaptations where there is a species recently of a crocodilian that was able to camouflage itself by putting twigs on top of it and then hunt. So not only could you only see the eyes and the nostrils, but they were making sure it's like, no, nothing to see here, just some branches.
Yeah. And they can think ahead to what they're going to do. So, you know, they can go underwater, they can see something way ahead of them, and they can plan what they're going to attack. If they were present in Triassic period, how do you think they survived?
What a good question. So Nina said, if they were present in the Triassic period, how do you think they survived environmental changes like acid rain? Because they can go into torpor, into this wonderful sort of stasis where they don't hibernate, but they just become inactive. And like Jess said earlier, by absorbing parts of their bodies, like the bone there, and linking to what you just said, every meal's a fight, but every meal is so important. If I had a really small breakfast this morning, my tummy's rumbling. You've got microphones, you might hear that.
We've got a long time to go.
I know. I didn't plan my morning. I got my alarms sorted, but I just still didn't plan ahead. If I miss a meal, so what? It might be months and months and months between meals here. So this ability that crocodilians are able to go a huge amount of time between meals, they're able to really digest their meals. They don't waste much of the matter they eat.
And that's also because the amount of energy that they are sort of using up in their day-to-day life really isn't very much.
No.
I mean, they wait for something to come nearby. They will have a spurt at the end and they'll have that fight. But between those times, they're just sitting and waiting for something to ambush. And also with all of so I think part of the question was about the fluctuations in temperature as well. They can actually manage it in quite a wide range, maybe partly because they have these osteoderms that help with their heat exchange. They're really, really good at finding areas that are the temperature that they need. So they can sunbathe in the sun, or they can find a warmer bit of water or a cooler bit of water. You know, they're actually really linked into the thing we were saying about their brain. We think of them as not that smart, but actually they know what they need. They can plan ahead to go to the places where they need the food that they want. And I'll talk about that later. The temperature that they need. You know, they actually have got quite a lot about them, a lot of things that they have to plan. So. And
we have, I mean, this species goes back about 11 million years, but in terms of the end Cretaceous asteroid strike, we know that 75% of life on Earth went, and poor old Triceratops and Rexy didn't make it through, but the crocodilians did, but not the big ones. We know that before that we had things like Sarcosuchus and Deinosuchus, these huge 10, 12, 13 meter long crocodile ancestors. But after the asteroid struck, no vertebrate really larger than a sheep was around. So the crocodiles and their relatives did survive, but they were completely selected against for the larger ones. So we allowed this evolution afterwards, again, when these environmental niches, these little gaps within their habitats, were able to be exploited. So they survive, but not every member has survived. We've had much larger and much greater diversity of crocodiles and their relatives in the past, haven't we?
And I also wonder if it was because they were such generalists, so they could survive on land and they could survive underwater also. So some of their relatives were completely terrestrial or completely in the water, but because these had the ability to sort of do a bit of everything, you know, whatever was working at that time, they could sort of make the most of that part of their evolutionary adaptations.
And that's it, the more specialist you are, like pandas.
Yes.
I love pandas.
Yeah.
But they're not going to be great at surviving a huge amount of environmental change. They live in very particular areas and they have quite particular diets. As you say, this can eat everything from invertebrates right through to turtles,
so
right through to
tiny,
birds and mammals.
Bugs,
Anything that walks past, that's it. So it can eat pretty much anything.
Yeah.
It can
survive
have huge meals.
In loads of different areas.
And they live for a long period.
Yeah.
They don't live for 10 years, 20 years. If it can survive this environmental change, it's going to sit back and let the world go by and do its thing.
Exactly, yeah.
These animals are still going. And that's a great question.
Should we look inside the mouth? And then we can look inside.
I'm getting...
I know, sorry. So let's just quickly look inside here. We're probably going to cut this out and see the whole thing on its own, but it's nice to see it inside the mouth.
Yeah.
So this here is the tongue.
It's bigger than my tongue. It's a big tongue.
It's a big muscular tongue, but actually it doesn't do that much. Like it's not got any, it's not prehensile. It can't come out and grab anything. Like it doesn't have much of a function.
Okay.
But what is incredible about the inside of the mouth is that they can shut this completely off. So if you see that there, it makes a complete seal.
It's like a little trapdoor at the back, isn't it?
It's like a trapdoor. That's exactly what it's like. Which means they can sit in this position with their mouths in the water, and nothing's going to go down their windpipe. They can still breathe. But what's absolutely incredible is, so these are the scuba pipes. So while it's sitting, this bit's all underwater. This is underwater, but that's shut, so nothing's going down there. They have nostrils. If you put your hand in there, you can feel there's 2 holes there.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So that's the end of the scuba. The air goes in there and then down the back of that, behind that flap, which makes it a complete tube, and they can breathe whilst their mouths are open underwater.
So you won't drown if you're waiting for your food to come in,
No.
if you're sunbathing and you're waiting for that bird to walk past or that little terrapin to there, you're not going to drown. That's really cool.
Yeah.
But we can see this with... I'm going to get told off for wiping guts on my... bits on my... We've got a couple of
I'm going to change my glass.
skulls here, haven't we?
Yes.
Another question. How strong is the bite from Jonah? So, Jonah, the bite is measured in a force called newtons, which is a way we measure force of something. Now, if you bite on something really hard as an adult, the most you can bite is about 1,200, maybe 1,500 newtons. That's a lot. But something like our big girl here was about 13,000 newtons, and it can go even higher to something like a saltwater crocodile, as much as 16,000 newtons. So a huge amount of bite force here. But sharks might be more, but we're not able to measure reliably and consistently. So that's another bit of science that maybe, Jonah, you can go and do the research one day.
Constantly changing, isn't
Exactly.
it? It's amazing.
So this is a cast of a skull this is from an alligator,
This is
isn't
the
it?
alligator, yes. So this is the same animal, as the same type of animal as the one we're looking at
And you
today.
can really imagine that in the water right now, can't you? That lovely flat, just the
that's
nostrils,
huge.
just the eyes.
Yep. So these nostrils, instead of just going straight down and into the mouth, which would mean obviously it couldn't keep its mouth open under the water, instead of that it has this incredible palate here, which creates a tube, and instead of the nostrils coming down here and into the mouth, it means the nostrils can open up here and they're behind that flap.
So that flap would be here somewhere, wouldn't it?
Yep, about there.
So that would close, the tongue's here, that would close here somewhere.
Yep, and then you've got the mouth here with the water inside it,
Yep.
but it's not going down into the lungs.
The snorkel's right at the back.
Yep.
That's amazing.
So clever.
And we see that, I mean, this is that's so heavy, it's salty
really heavy
as well. We see the same thing here. So we see these wonderful little, and that's an amazing adaptation, again, which allows these animals to breathe, to hunt underwater. So even the presence of a hole is a really important adaptation sometimes, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Okay. And actually, you were saying earlier, Jess, you can see these attachments for the muscles here. So you get this wonderful snap. It is just like a mousetrap, isn't it?
Yeah.
But you've got this muscle attachment behind, which was all that musculature. But there's nothing on the top
Nothing on the top. So
to open up.
something that eats a lot of vegetation and does a lot of chewing throughout the day. They often have these, what did I call them?
We're a big cat here.
Yeah. So, I mean, they're not, the herbivores have them even more so. They have the huge ones because they're chewing all day.
Like mountain gorillas.
Yes, exactly like that. They have those huge muscle attachments here, don't they?
Yeah.
But yeah, big cats also will chew their prey. They don't just gulp it down like a...
Cool.
Cool, so I think we'll look at this. I mean, inside there, you have got the various holes. You've got the glottis there. That's what goes down into the trachea, and that's what joins up the snorkel to the lungs. But I think that will maybe be easier to see when we get the whole thing out. Maybe the only other thing to say here is that they have a larynx, which is, so the larynx is our voice box.
Yep.
That's what we use to make our sounds. And actually, alligators are really good communicators. Hopefully we'll learn a little bit more about that. We're going to try.
We've got a sneaky plan.
Oh, I really hope it works. But anyway, you'll have to wait and see if that's going to work. But that's where they make all their noises, down there in the larynx. Okay, let's do the inside.
Let's do it?
Yeah.
Okay. We're going to turn her over now. So we're going to have Paul and Catherine, if that's all right, in a moment, come and help us move her over. We're going to be cutting from just beneath her throat, down her tummy, right down to near the base of her tail. We were using sharp knives and scissors, as we mentioned earlier, so please don't use sharp knives and scissors at home if you want to try and be like Jess and me. Wait until you're a little bit older, maybe, or until mum and dad decide to get you an alligator somehow on the kitchen table? Do you know, when I was growing up, I was allowed to dissect stuff on my kitchen table at home. My mum allowed me to have...
You should be telling them that.
I know, I'm sorry, but sometimes you're allowed. If mums and dads, if you want to teach your kids how to do this sort of stuff and get involved, I started when I was young. I bet you did as well.
I did as well, yeah.
Yeah.
Chickens. I know we both love our chickens now. But
So you can
Chickens
do
is what
things
I
like this at
started with.
home, but you've just got to have parental supervision. So we're going to turn her over. We're going to be looking inside. Again, because the heart isn't beating, you're not going to see sprays of blood. So if you've tuned in for that, tough luck, I'm
there
afraid.
probably will be some blood, but not spraying.
No, it's not going to be
clotted, probably.
scary or gory or horrible.
Fascinating and amazing and
Exactly,
cool.
exactly. So we're going to roll her over, and we are going to cut from this end to this end, and we're going to look inside first of all, but we will be taking some of the organs out
Yeah,
to
definitely.
look at them in more detail when they're
Yeah.
not inside her, won't we?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Again, we hope this works. We'll see. Right, guys, let's try and turn her over.
This is a first for all of us, so we're sort of, oh my days. We're going this way, yeah?
Yeah.
Don't break on the table.
We have very luckily had the UEA Anatomy Lab lend us quite a bit of equipment today, which has made this possible. So thank you guys if you're watching this as well.
Thank you very much. So obviously when we're cutting, we're going to need to cut between these,
Yep.
just to make our lives easier and so we don't go through a million blades.
It's like an old Roman mosaic, isn't it? It's not just... And I usually work with mammals, so
Sure.
the hairy things, and
Yeah, yeah.
it's much easier to cut something.
Yep.
Whereas again, it's just solid, isn't it? It is. These aren't the osteoderms. These are just these are keratin scales, the same stuff that
Which
makes
is
your
the
fingernails.
same, yes,
and-
exactly. Yeah.
But they're very,
So
very
yeah,
hard.
it's incredible to think that the material that makes these scales can also be found in different forms in hair and in fingernails. What was, sorry,
We've
what
got,
was it?
Natalie, what was the first one? We've got James asking, is the flap made out of cartilage or is it a thick layer of skin, the flap in the base of the throat?
It has got a cartilage sort of skeleton, but it's muscle and skin.
And Eve has asked, do they have a good sense of smell?
Yes, they actually have a really good sense of smell, which is surprising, isn't it? But
Yeah.
oh, that's something else. Maybe we could see it on the skull. So where the scuba goes, where the scuba tube goes, there's sort of like a cave, like a cavern in there. I don't know if because it's the cast, it'll be inside there. I don't
Okay.
know. But inside there, inside here, there's a chamber, and that is really rich with capillaries, and that's where they do their smelling. There's a lot of nerves in there, which send messages to the brain and tell them lots about what they're smelling, what the air that's coming through their nostrils is telling them. So, yeah, surprising that they have a good
Yeah,
sense of.
I've never really
Unlike
thought
you.
about that. Okay. And again, it sounds weird, but looking at the underneath her, she's just really flat. You're used to animals having like a curved tummy, like a mammal or
Sure,
a
yeah.
shark
So
even.
normally, one of the first stages of a dissection would be you'd cut inside sort of the armpits to lay them flat, because otherwise you'd have the legs sticking up like this. We don't really need to do that with her because she's so lovely and flat. So I think we'll just go straight ahead and do the incision all the way down and then around the cloaca, and then probably don't need to go too far down the tail because it's just muscle and some blood vessels. So
And I guess normally when you do a dissection, you look for signs of pathology, so disease,
Yes.
and also injuries as well. And we had a good look earlier, didn't we? We saw a little lump on the top of her snout.
Yeah.
She's missing one of her toes,
yeah,
which is weird on that side, I think.
yeah. I mean that could be a historic injury from when she was a hatchling, even one of the other hatchlings
Yeah.
biting her.
But there's nothing that's obvious that she's not.
Oh, the other thing that I wanted to say when we were talking about the males, actually talking about hatchlings, is even though they have these really sharp teeth and this amazing bite force, they can actually be really, really gentle and sensitive. And the mother alligators are incredibly gentle with their eggs and with their hatchlings, and they often help them out of the shells, and they can pick them up in their mouth. They're able to make these really gentle movements as well as the snapping movements. So they can seem like ferocious predators, but if you learn a little bit about them as mothers, they're actually incredibly sensitive animals as well.
Oh. Alligator mums. And actually, on that, is it just the mums that look after the young?
I think so, yeah.
It's not. There's no dad involvement. These
No,
are
I don't
very
think so.
maternal, but they
Yeah.
protect them up to a year, don't they?
Yeah,
and
yeah,
look
yeah.
after them and make
Yeah.
sure that nothing else eats them. And
Yeah, they're really, really good mummies.
great gator
Cool,
mums.
okay, so let's start.
We do have Jess. Now, we even have specialist gloves today that you can wear on your left hand
Okay.
if you're right cutting. Now, we're using specialist gloves because when we're cutting into the alligator, we want to make sure that we don't cut our
Ourselves.
other hand. Obviously, there can be issues with this, so we want to make sure that we're as safe as we can be. These are very special gloves made from material like Kevlar, so like bulletproof and stab-proof vests, where we can make sure we don't get caught out and cut ourselves.
A question from Astro Dav. Do they have different blood type groups like humans? I'm not sure about that. So their blood is obviously completely different to other animals. Their red blood cells have, does that go over top of that? Is that what what was I saying? Yeah, their blood is completely different to within the different species. So a crocodile blood would be different to an alligator blood. Their red blood cells are very different to ours. They have, they're not as specialised, I suppose. They have nuclei still, whereas ours don't. But within alligators, do they have different blood types? I mean, certainly other types of animals do. So dogs have different blood types. I'd say most mammal species do have multiple blood groups, but whether, I don't know if any reptiles do you know?
I don't.
That's quite a vetted question.
If you've got any reptile experts out there, let us know about different blood groups or blood types. Does anyone know about blood types in... Again, like we say, we don't know everything about this animal, but if you can find out, or in fact, by the end of this dissection, let us know if they have different blood types. I'd be interested to know.
Oh yes, I'm sure the answer's out there somewhere. They don't have very much blood compared to a mammal, that I do know. They have, their circulating volume of blood is much, much less than a mammal, sort of as a percentage. So maybe it's not as variable, I don't know. Anyway, let's start.
What do you want me to do?
So if we just make it sort of, if we go along this line, basically what we're trying to do, we're just going through the skin at this point, and we just want a line all the way along, basically. Now this bit can take a while if you're doing it sort of delicately. So
how long would a dissection normally last? If you had all the time in the world, Jess, how long would you take on a dissection?
Oh my days, well, I'm so interested in it, and I'm quite meticulous about it. It can take ages, but obviously when you're working as a vet, in cat and dog medicine, you don't end up doing that many postmortems. Usually, if you've got a patient that's been ill, you generally know why it's died because it's what you've been treating it for. So they're not actually, it's not that common that we end up doing postmortems, and really, I haven't done that many, only a handful since I was at vet school. Zoo animals are often, they often do postmortems. Firstly, because we sometimes don't know that much about that animal because there haven't been that many opportunities to look at their bodies before. And sometimes, you know, we didn't even know they were ill and suddenly they die, so we need to know if there's a danger for the rest of their group. But yeah, you know, you could take, as long as, if you were looking at every single vessel and nerve, you could spend days doing it, or you could, you know, just make a big incision and look at the main organs and do it quickly.
So I know that last year we had Professor John Hutchinson from the Royal Veterinary College, and I hope John's watching, but I wish you were here today, John, and next year, hopefully, we'll get you back. We did the ostrich last year. Did you come and see the ostrich last year?
No, I was ill, wasn't I?
You
I
were,
was really
yeah.
ill. And I
John
was pregnant,
spent-
and I didn't want to be around dead stuff, I think.
That's fair enough.
Yeah.
John spent months doing bits of research on that same ostrich, looking at muscles, and there were little updates all the way throughout because he had a team doing other bits, and
how
so a dissection can initially take a few hours, but as Jess said, it can take days, weeks, or even months when you're still doing research on that same animal. Some more questions. What unique traits does it have that could evolve for other purposes?
Oh my days, that's quite a wide question, isn't it?
And also, from Paul, What do you call a baby gator?
A hatchling and then a juvenile, I think.
Not a gatorlet.
Huh?
Not a gatorlet or a gatorling or...
Gatorling. Oh, gatorling.
Should we call it
Let's go
gatorling?
with gatorling. Yeah, I like that.
Do one of you two want to come and help with the dissect?
Yeah, that would
with
be
with
awesome if you-
with pulling out? If you want to.
Yeah, so normally if you were doing a dissection or a postmortem to find out why an animal had died, you would take samples of all of the different organs, because often you can't tell just by looking at them what's wrong with them. You need to send off a section to a lab, and then someone will look under a microscope, and you can often, find out lots more by looking at something under the microscope.
I'm literally just pulling as hard as you can and just going under either side. Just keep going up. So if we just keep doing that as much as you can, we'll cut across there and
If
there
you then
afterwards.
start undermining the skin like this, so you sort of peel the skin back.
Yeah. Jess, did you ever imagine that you'd be doing this when you're growing up? I mean, there's a lot of people, a lot of young people out there who'll be interested in knowing, like, how do they do this? Well, I want to do that when I get older. And even some older people will be going, I want to do that now. How did you get into this?
This specifically, that's
Not this
been
specific, that was me
this has
going,
been
Jess,
a
what are you
long
doing next
and windy
week?
road. I always knew I wanted to work with animals. I've sort of fluctuated between wanting to be a vet, I wanted to be a farmer at one point, I wanted to be a zookeeper, I wanted to work in conservation for a bit. I did work at a vet's, I think that's one of the best ways if you want to be a vet, it's harder to do these days, I think, but to try and get some experience, because it really is probably quite different to what you think if you've never experienced it before. I went and did experience in loads of places. I was a vegetarian, but I went to an abattoir because I knew that vets worked there, and that was part of the training. Going to work on like dairy farms, helping out with lambing. It's hard to do in this part of the country because we don't really have many sheep farms. Yeah, I guess I got experience in as many different areas as I could, and then found that I loved primates. That for a while I thought was where, the direction I was going to head in, and that's how I met you, isn't it, Ben? When we were both interested in primates and going to the same sort of lectures and things. I don't know how I ended up here doing this alligator, but I think I just always knew I wanted to work with animals, and I think I've done a lot of saying yes to opportunities that scared me. So I think it can be easy to stop yourself from accessing an opportunity because you think you're not going to be good at it, or you're not. I felt a bit like that about this today. Like, what if I don't know the answer to every single question that somebody asked me? But my intrigue about the insides of the alligator won out. What about you, Ben?
It may surprise you, Jess, but I was a very weird child. So I grew up in Great Yarmouth, not far from where you were, and I spent a lot of time on the beaches with my granddad and granny, and I just got to really fall in love with nature, and I think that's what it was for me, this falling in love with nature and this constant, like so many kids, why, how, when, where, and I was brought up by mum, dad and grannies and granddads to be encouraged to ask questions, and it was great, and I don't know about you, but none of my family ever went to university, none of them had been academics, and that was really important because they still said you can achieve whatever you want to do and really explore and go out there and explore the world, and it just seemed
to find the answers to go out.
Yeah, but it seemed impossible, but equally at the same time I thought, yeah, you can do this.
Yeah.
And same as you, Jess, I had all these different ideas what I wanted to do, and I want to be a doctor, and I want to work in a pathology lab studying why humans got sick and ultimately didn't do very well, and then I thought about being a vet and all these different things, but for me it was becoming a biologist because it allowed me to work with everything from alligators to chimps to whales, and I've dissected all those and worked with them all in the wild, and that was it really. It was that constant childlike, never stopping asking those questions.
That's important to keep forever. I still don't know what I want to do when I grow up. I think that's something that's a constant journey, isn't it? You don't have to be one thing. You just be interested and see where the science takes you.
So we've got a couple of questions coming in there. One from Mark, who is one of our patrons for the Norwich Science Festival. Thanks, Mark. Glad you're watching. Mark's doing a lot of amazing events this week as well, so tune in to see what Mark is doing throughout the Norwich Science Festival. And Mark has asked, how much have they changed since the crocodiles and crocodiliomorphs first evolved? Now, there's a trap here somewhere. I can see it coming, Mark. There's a term called living fossils. I hate the term living fossils. I'm so glad you nodded then as well, because very often you'll see on TV productions going, the horseshoe crab is a good example of a living fossil.
Or this is
coelacanth.
Coelacanth,
That wonderful
always
fish
use,
off
don't
Madagascar. The coelacanth of Madagascar is a good example of a living fossil. I don't know why it has to be an American accent, sorry guys. There is no such thing as a living fossil. Horseshoe crabs look very similar to what they did several 100 million years ago, but they've evolved all the way throughout that, every step of the way.
It's just that their original evolution was so good.
Yeah.
Like, you know.
Yeah. They're not inanimate objects. They're not hammers.
No.
I've had a hammer for years since I was a kid that I used for fossil collecting. It's not changed because it doesn't need to. It's an object. Life isn't like that. Life evolves all the time, and as that famous scientist Dr. Grant said, life finds a way. Jurassic Park. Life isn't static. Life doesn't just stay there as it is. So yes, the crocodiles and crocodiliomorphs look very similar, but over that time they have changed massively. Even the 11 million years that this particular species, or between 7 and 11 million years this particular species has been around, it will have gone through incredible changes in terms of the way you get different colours in different areas, and it reflects the environmental changes we see in the southern states of the US. The fact that the females are different sizes than the males, the fact that you can get them from very pale colours to very dark colours, this ability to fluctuate their body conditions with environmental conditions have all changed over time as well. And at a microscopic level, Jess talking about blood and the microfibers of muscles, those changes will happen over generations. They might be so small you can barely see them at a scanning electron microscope, but it still means they're evolving. And even now, the horseshoe crabs, the coelacanths, are still having to evolve in a very changing world. So they will have evolved. Every animal, every group of animal, every taxonomic group of animal alive today is still evolving, including us. Nothing stays the same. If it's a fossil, that doesn't change. But a living fossil, you can't have, I'm afraid.
It can't exist, can it? No.
We need to stop saying living fossils. There's another question there, very good question. How long ago did she die, and how have we kept her so fresh? So she died a couple of weeks ago, as far as I know, didn't she?
Yep.
And the really nice thing is, as soon as something's dead like this, it starts to break down. It starts to decompose.
Within hours.
No, I haven't got a sense of smell. So it's not COVID. I've just not had one since I was about 10 years old. But you guys, does she smell yet?
Not too bad, actually, no.
Is there a smell, anything?
There is a smell,
Yeah?
but it's not, it's not that bad, not particularly offensive.
Now, she was stuck in a freezer very, very quickly. It's a freeze, like fresh food. If you can freeze it very quickly, it preserves the meat, it preserves the tissue that you'll see there. So she was frozen very, very quickly, and we defrosted her over a period of several days to very slowly bring her back to the outside conditions. And this allowed her to be, nice and soft, but not frosty and not sloppy inside. There's nothing worse than doing a dissection if it's gross. And also in terms of the samples that we would normally take for vets or for other types of research, you don't want things breaking down like the tissue itself. So this is taking a bit of time, but it's all part of the thing, isn't it? If this was a mammal, we'd be in by now, but this is very hard to cut through. And we'll actually go through lots of these blades. As you can imagine, these blades are very, very sharp, but we'll have to replace those over the next couple of hours just to make sure that we keep them as sharp as possible. What were you saying, Jess?
Obviously, freezing them does have an effect. It won't look completely the same. The organs won't look completely the same as they would have done if we had done this dissection immediately after she had died. But definitely it keeps it, as fresh as we possibly could.
Remember to keep those questions coming in. If you're just joining us now, then hope you've had your Sunday lunch already. If not, This is Jess and Catherine, and we are here dissecting this beautiful American alligator, which has been donated to us from a British zoological collection. as part of the Norwich Science Festival this week. In conjunction with UEA, we are having a look inside one of nature's most impressive predators. And if you are just joining us and you're thinking, well, this is A, weird, and B, gross, yeah, you're probably right. If you're thinking it's wrong, then I'd ask why you're watching, first of all, but also importantly, this is part of research, this is for education purposes, and whether you like zoos or not, this is a question beyond that, really. This is an opportunity for vets and vets watching, and biologists and other people watching as well. Kids right through to senior academics will be watching today, hopefully, to gain an understanding or to further their understanding of the anatomy and adaptations of predators like this. And as Jess said earlier, the opportunity to look inside zoo animals, and if they've had a healthy life, they've had a not healthy life, either way, we can really explore what it means to have good welfare in these collections. Now, her body will be going up to Edinburgh, to the National Museum of Scotland after this, where her bones, her skin, and her DNA will be kept for generations to come. That we can be doing research with her in hundreds of years of time. It'll allow us to understand how alligators age, to look at sexual dimorphism, to look at conservation status and the impact of captivity on the welfare and body of these animals as well. So if you're not enjoying this, there's plenty of other things to watch. If you are enjoying this, stay with us. Right, more questions. Are the large bulbous muscles by the jaw the masseters? From Jared.
Yeah, we thought they were, didn't we? Yeah.
Yeah.
So here's an example of something, I don't know what it is, but it looks quite interesting. There are these sort of bulbous lumps here. They're on both sides, which makes me think it's not something that shouldn't be there. I thought they were maybe going to be salivary glands because they're right under the tongue, but when I cut into them, they've got this, I mean, it looks like pussy stuff coming out of them. So if any alligator experts can tell me, so I'm under the tongue here, and I've got these paired, I mean, they look like glands, but...
I was going to say, okay, as someone who did an animal behaviour degree, first of all, do they scent?
Yes, they think they have some glands around the cloaca, and I think they do have, maybe it's something to do with that. That just looks pussy to me, like that looks like...
And you're right, it doesn't look pathological because it's both sides.
And they were equal, you know, and they were very round.
Okay, as someone with no sense of smell, I have to ask Jess, can you get your nose in, give it a good smell and tell the viewers what it smells like?
I'm not going any closer than that. I don't think it smells.
How weird. If you know what these weird little things are either side of the jaw, Will, any idea? No?
Actually, that crocodile book might, if someone wants to have a look in
Amelia, Natalie's daughter, is the tongue rough? Oh, that's a good question.
No, it's actually really, well, have a feel. It's super smooth.
So I've got cats and a
Oh, look, there we go. We can put it this way.
My fingers.
Sorry, oh, sorry. Sorry, I didn't mean to bite you there. But...
It's dimpled
Can I have a feel?
at the end, but it's not rough like a cat's tongue.
Yeah, not like a cat. I mean, they're super rough, aren't they?
And again, because a cat's tongue is used to process food, isn't it? So this is just a big, quite slobbery tongue, really.
Yeah. There you
Yeah.
go, you can see that too. It looks like, though, it's got, you know, it can taste it. It looks like they look... So, and that's the glottis there. I don't know if you can see it better now. So that is what will lead down, and you can feel down there the hard rings of the trachea. So that's what they breathe down. And there, can you see? No. Well, you guys can see. They're those internal nostrils that, you know, we saw on the inside of the palate of the skull.
Cora has asked, why is the skin scaly?
And then that there.
That's a really good question, Cora. My glasses are falling off, first of all, sorry.
Hang on, mate.
Why is the skin scaly? It sounds a really obvious question for a reptile, but why do reptiles have scaly skin? I think it's a great question. Partly it's to reduce moisture loss. So lots of reptiles live in very dry, arid conditions. If you think about lots of snakes and chameleons in deserts or dry environments, it's a way to stop water being lost. And also, as Jess said earlier, it's a protective thing. If you're swimming through really sharp branches and over stones, I mean, I swam off the Norfolk coast not so long ago. It was getting winter, and it was really stony, and I got some cuts on my legs and things like that. It's lovely, nice and cold. My skin's quite delicate. I'm quite soft-skinned, but they don't have skin like that. They have very, very tough skin from keratin, which is the same material that makes our fingernails and our hair. And if you can see there, I'm not sure if we can see as we're having a look in, but it's still really thick. Now our skin is much, much, much thinner than that. We don't have anything like these scales to keep us safe.
It doesn't seem to have so many layers though. I mean, we have lots of layers to our skin with different. It seems simpler.
It is. Importantly, there's no fat layer.
No fat. So they do have fat, but not in the same way that we do, sort of incorporated as a layer. How thick is their skin? So, well, you can see the full thickness of it there.
So James has asked, how thick is their skin, and do they have any predators? Nothing would predate an adult alligator like this, apart from humans, unfortunately, James. Prehistorically, there would have been competing species. They were right in the same area as things like T-Rex, and further back other theropod dinosaurs. And across their range, we know that they would have come in, not alligators like this, but other members of the crocodile or crocodilian and crocodilomorph groups would have come into contact with things like Spinosaurus and other major predators, but currently no. Some people are asking how she died. Because she was at least 17, she could be as much as 100, we really don't know. She seems to have come to the end of her natural life. As far as we were told,
we might find something.
We might see something inside, and this is with having Jess here, we can see if there's any indications of inflammation, of disease, but at the moment there seems to be nothing obvious here. I mean, actually, Jess, in terms of the muscle as well, she's got quite good muscle content, isn't she?
Better than I was expecting, actually, considering her age. My goodness, if you think of like a little old lady, I was thinking she'd be a bit, but no, she's super muscly, isn't she?
So she's like Super Gran, basically, isn't she? She's like this wonderful old lady who survived for a long period of time. There's no obvious signs of pathology, any disease or infection so far. We'll have a look as we get further inside. But nicely, it seems she just lived a very long and very happy life and maintained that wonderful body content there.
So we're starting to actually see some of the internal organs now.
Harry and Olivia. We both know Harry and Olivia, don't we, from online. Are alligators at risk from anything like habitat destruction or poaching? What a good question, guys, first of all. Whilst there are over 1 million species around the planet right now at imminent threat from extinction, sadly, fortunately, American alligators seem to be on the list that aren't doing too badly. And like Jess said earlier, we think it's partly because they're so well adapted to so many different types of habitats and environments. They can eat so many things, they can survive environmental changes. That doesn't mean to say that they're completely safe and we don't need to worry about them. But whereas we look at things like Hainan gibbons, for example, one of the rarest mammals on the planet, there's only 24, 25 left. They're what we call critically endangered. They are one step away from extinction. And that goes through down to endangered, vulnerable, and right down to least concern. So out of all of the animals we look at, this is in the safest category for now. But often we do see animals that go from least concern to vulnerable to endangered to critically endangered and to extinct. So this doesn't mean to say we haven't got to worry about them. At the moment, there are no major threats to
And I think that's also partly
gators.
because there have been some effective conservation efforts. I think, you know, in the 70s, there was a bit of a drop in their population, but it was noted and changes were made, and their numbers started to bounce back again. So, like you say, it's not that we can just be complacent that they're going to be okay. You know, we did have to change things. We did have to stop them being hunted in certain areas and put bans on taking them from certain areas to make sure that those numbers were protected.
And also, they are used for their meat. They're also used for their skin, for leather, and often they're farmed, aren't they? They're relatively easy to farm. So wild populations are doing pretty well, whereas these animals, when they are being exploited or used or utilised, in whether you think it's right or wrong, it's in a farmed capacity, very usually. We've got a question from Danny there asking, what are the differences between crocs and gators?
Oh yeah, so there's some obvious differences in just to look at them. So basically alligators have sort of a U-shaped head. They're a lot broader. And crocodiles are sort of more pointy. They have a more triangular shaped head. I was just looking at the skulls to see, but I don't think it's as obvious on the skulls. And also the teeth. So with alligators, you can generally only see, it's really hard to see now. Yeah, so with the alligators, you can generally only see the top teeth when the mouth is closed, whereas with the crocodiles, you can see sort of an interlocking collection of various different teeth. Anatomically, sort of inside, they're roughly similar. Crocodiles have salt glands and alligators don't, which suggests that maybe they came from an ancestor that lived in the sea. Do you think maybe?
Yeah, they're far less able to survive in brackish or
Alligators are.
alligators,
And
yeah,
that's
marine
because of these
habitats.
salt glands which are used to process salty water. But I mean, like we said at the beginning, the whole family are incredibly similar. Their body plans in general are remarkably unchanged.
And actually, I'm going to go massive nerd here right now. If you hadn't guessed already, they were only classified as alligators in 1811 by an amazing taxonomist, someone who studies differences in animals, called Cuvier, Charles Cuvier from France, who named different species of whales and different things. And he was the one who coined the term alligator, because before that they were classed as just a different type of crocodile. And it's worth remembering that in science, it's us that notices the differences. It's not them. They don't need to know whether it's an alligator or a crocodile. If they want to fight with it or breed with it, then they do. But they don't think, oh, there's an alligator, there's a crocodile. It's just something that's the same as me or something that's different. So it's
Could
humans that
alligators
put
and
these.
Alligators and crocodiles couldn't interbreed. Could they?
No, I'm saying whether it thinks if it just needs to breed, it needs to be the
Yeah.
same. If it wants to fight or compete, it's just different. They just care if it's the same or different, don't they? So even things that are really obvious, like butterflies and moths, there's a bit in the middle where it's really hard to tell because some moths have adaptations like butterflies and vice versa, and some fly in the day when they shouldn't, and some do and some don't. So it's us in science.
They don't
that
read the
uses-
rule books, do
No,
they?
animals don't read the rules. We put those rules on them. So in terms of the actual differences, there's lots of grey areas with lots of these different animals.
So look, we're really getting to these muscles now, those jaw muscles.
Just looking so if you can see from above what we're doing here. We've opened up her chest cavity, her abdominal cavity in the tummy area and around the throat as well. And like Jess has said, you've got these huge lumpy muscles here. They're solid, aren't they?
Incredibly strong. Yeah.
Now, it looks like
Yep.
she swallowed a Henry the Hoover. I hate to tell you, is this what killed her? What is this?
No, this is not a Henry the Hoover. This is actually her windpipe. That's her trachea. And that's what the snorkel that we were looking at before, so where the nostrils led to. And this here, this is her larynx. I'm trying to get the whole thing out and to flip it back, but we might need to get into here and open that up a little bit so you can feel
Cut back a little bit.
yeah. Because that's obviously going inside the rib cage, because that will go down to the lungs and the heart. It's really protected inside this rib cage here, so we need to sort of get a little bit deeper and get that out. And then hopefully, what I'm hoping we'll be able to do is take all the way from the tongue, with the trachea and the esophagus and the heart and the lungs all attached out, and then look at that system as one piece. And that's when we might be able to do our experiments, but
I think what's so cool is between Jess and I and Catherine here, we've done lots of dissections and lots of investigations into lots of different animals. And part of the fun, and this is fun. There's nothing wrong with saying this is fun. I think I'm having fun. You? Yeah. Part of the fun is that you're learning new anatomy as you go along. So even as I'm dissecting this chest right now, it's very different to dissecting a mammal like a whale or a primate like a monkey. The anatomy is different, the way the muscle sits on top of the ribs is different, and already I can see this rib cage is really different to what I'd normally expect when I dissect most of my mammals. But it's exploration. So what are you looking at there, Jess?
So, this is inside the mouth, which was really hard to see before because we were looking between the jaws, but you can see it really well now. So if you can just imagine, this is the tongue here that I've reflected back. This was that flap that shut to stop any water getting down the trachea. This is the glottis here, that goes down to the trachea. And then at the back here, that big pipe there, that's the esophagus. So the air goes down this one and the food goes down this big stretchy esophagus. And obviously their pieces of food can be absolutely huge. So that's made of super stretchy material. And then these holes here, they're the internal nostrils, which were the bottom piece of the scuba pipe.
You've got a veterinary question there from a vet student, from Ryan. Ryan's studying to be a vet. How wide can the esophagus expand to allow large food matter? It's a really good question.
I mean, I couldn't give you an exact size, but it's really, really very stretchy. You can see it has lots of folds in there, I mean, they don't they don't chew their food at all. And sort of the thorax of the animal that they're eating will go down whole. So I imagine it can stretch, you know, to that sort of diameter. It's incredible.
And I guess there's not such a problem with choking as well. If they've got this ability to breathe through this little extended snorkel, humans are rubbish at choking on things, aren't they? But I guess there wouldn't be an issue if it was chewing half a leg or something like that.
No, and actually sometimes the food is in the mouth for a long time while they're either fighting with it or they're holding it underwater to drown it, or you know, sometimes it stays in that mouth cavity for a long time. Obviously they need to take a breath in that time, and sometimes they're even underwater when they're doing that. So the amazing thing about this this flap here, this palatal flap, or gular flap, palatal valve, some people call it, means that while whatever's in the mouth is in the mouth, the breathing can just carry on as it normally would. Will, do just jump in if you have anything you want to. I think we're going to have to cut through the ribs there.
Yeah. I've taken a lot of the muscle off. Natalie, it would be great to know how many of our viewers think this is cool with a little vote right now. If you do think this is cool, please let us know, because we're only doing this for you guys. We could quite easily do this behind the scenes and you'd never see what we're doing. So if you're enjoying it, please let us know. And if you're watching this and you know that other people would like to watch this as well, then tell them to get involved, tell them to tune in. We're here for the next few hours.
It'd be really interesting to know as well, sort of where their interest is. Are they children who are interested in the anatomy, or are they, how many vet students have we got? Have we got any vets who, I know some of my vet friends were interested in watching.
And of course, if you're a UEA student, then please let us know and say hi if you've got any questions. We've got Will Nash, who'll be doing some more specific stuff with the heart and lungs in a wee while, but let us know if you're around.
You just want to be careful not to go through the esophagus. Although I guess I could cut this off from the esophagus here, that might make it easier.
We can...
Maybe I'll do that. And we can just take this whole thing. Yeah, that'll probably be easier.
Now, we had Harry and Olivia's question earlier about the gators and their conservation status. Now, luckily, as we said, at the moment they're doing very well, and as Jess mentioned, it's due to some very successful conservation interventions before, but there are members of the family, of the crocodilian family, who aren't doing very well. So I spent a lot of time in West Africa the last couple of years, and some of the species of crocodiles over there are doing very, very badly because sadly they're losing habitat, it's being destroyed, and also they're being actively hunted for the international and commercial bushmeat trade, where they're being hunted and sent sometimes around the world for their meat, also for their skins sometimes. So there are lots of members of the crocodilian family who aren't doing as well right now. So just like tigers and lions and elephants and these iconic mammals, reptiles do need a lot of conservation work as well, don't they? So they're a beautiful group, just as important as any of the big, iconic, beautiful mammals, which I love, but
and
equally...
even if you don't love them for being an incredible, amazing alligator, which you should, you know, they have important roles in the food web and the ecosystem as well. You know, every animal has its role, whether you like it or not.
I love the feedback we're getting. Emily has said this is very cool. Hope has said it's beautiful. Hope, you're an amazing person. You're going to be an amazing biologist one day, or a serial killer. And I'm hearing it's definitely cool. Lots of kids are saying that. So that's brilliant. The fact that you're enjoying this and you're watching this, that's great. We're nearly there. It takes a little while to get through this section, and as Jess said, we will get to the internal organs soon.
We just want to be delicate about doing it so that we can do our experiment with this section here.
And there's a little bit of professional pride, isn't there?
Yeah.
No one wants to do a really horrible dissection. So if you just go in and go, yeah!
And like Hope
not
said,
good.
it's beautiful. I mean, we want to keep it beautiful.
Yeah.
Because the internal organs of animals are fascinating and beautiful.
And also you don't want to just, why you don't just stab in like this, Jess, and go all the way up, because you'd piss stuff, wouldn't you?
Yep, exactly.
Which is not good. Oh, more questions. Wendy from ARU, how is the chest different to dissect from mammals? Ah, Wendy. Usually, well, I can tell you very quickly, this one is very much a funnel-shaped chest, and there's very little give in it. So we'll talk more about this later, but then when we breathe, the chest really heaves open. They've got these big intercostal muscles, which they're all here with this one, but it's weird to explain, but sometimes you can't explain how it's different, you just know it's different, I think, don't you?
Yeah, and I
the
think
structure's much more rigid. There's bony material that goes right down here, which we can talk about later, which is, I love the adaptation. They have this, almost the rib cage seems as though it extends right down here, where it doesn't quite. This is the gastralia, which is a series of bones that don't attach to the spinal column, but it helps with muscle attachment and protection. And also the way the meat, the muscle, sorry, sits on the rib cage. It's one of these examples, it feels different. It doesn't come off in the same way that bird does, for example, or mammal. And I guess it's, as someone who's done, I've dissected everything from sperm whales to chimps to gators and much smaller animals, many smaller animals. Everyone feels different. You get to know them differently, don't you? I can, from your perspective, this is different to a cat or a dog, not in terms of the size and shape, the way the knife moves across, you just get the experience. It sounds weird, but you know how the knife flows around certain animals, and this one is flowing really differently for me, actually.
yeah, and you know, they are all very different, but I'm also often really struck by how overall the same, and they are very different, like you say, like you can feel that it's different, but the fact that we all, even though we look so different, we look completely different from an alligator, inside we have essentially the same organs. I always find that absolutely fascinating. Even though they come in lots of different shapes and sizes, the overall sort of recipe, the overall body plan, some of it's so the same.
Yeah, I guess already you know where the heart's going to be, you know where the stomach's going to be, you
exactly.
know where the liver, for example. Okay, so what is the plan now? Are we?
I think
do you
we
want
need
to cut through?
into that.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Do you want to cut through ribs? Do you want to cut through ribs, Paul? We've had Catherine doing the delicate work with the scalpel. We've got Paul with a pair of rib cutters who's going to go through the ribs. Now, because we are sending her to the National Museum of Scotland afterwards, we are cutting through the ribs. We're not cutting at the junctions. So this will allow friends and colleagues up there to look at joints, if they're looking at joint fusion, to look at growth patterns. If you cut through the middle of a bone, aesthetically, it doesn't look as nice, but it actually allows better research, fundamentally. No one, unless you're looking at the way the middle sort of area of a bone grows, which they're not, I know, for these ribs, you can just cut through the centre of them here. Yeah, so as much as possible, just try and go not quite at the joint, we just try and all...
You could do it sort of on both sides and then lift it up if you want.
Abby, is there any bone in the tail? Yes, there are lots of bones in the tail. Just like cats and dogs, the tail is full of vertebrae here. So the pelvic girdle, the pelvis itself, will be sat around this area here. And then the bones of the tail, Abby, will go right down almost to the very, very end. And I can't feel because she's so solid. Very often in mammals you can feel where the bones are, in primates, monkeys for example. With her, I just know they're in there. But she's absolutely solid all the way down. There's huge muscle. Again, a lot of the power comes from this area where they swim. And when we swim, it's that wonderful overarm or breaststroke motion.
It's all about
there.
the tail, isn't it?
It's all about the tail. They can be in the water and just very gently glide the tail. And I've caught a few wild crocs both in Madagascar and West Africa, and East Africa, sorry, and their tail is massively powerful. They can do a lot of damage with this. It can either be very, very delicately moved or incredibly dangerous. But there's a lot of muscle here, a lot of bone in here, which is used for movement and also for defense, for fighting as well. More questions. Would alligators ever eat each other? Ooh.
Yeah, they absolutely
Yes.
do.
Yeah.
So often happens when they're small. Yeah, cannibalism definitely does happen. Sometimes adult ones would eat the smaller ones, or sometimes the not so, like within the same litter. Sometimes they'll feed on each other as well. They definitely do eat each other, which is common. I mean, you have a huge clutch of eggs. So when an animal has so many babies, you don't always expect all of them to survive. And that happens a lot. With animals that have lots and lots of babies, you'll often see that the young will eat each other. Definitely happens in mini beasts a lot. Sorry to always bring everything back to mini beasts.
But it helps, doesn't it? By looking at different
Absolutely,
groups,
yeah.
you don't always need to understand everything about crocodiles and alligators to talk more about. You can use different species, different groups,
Yeah.
even invertebrates, to explain the same animal behaviour,
Yeah.
ecology, and trophic levels. All that stuff can be done from different groups.
That's looking really good. We're getting there now. If we could just get through here, then I might be able to get to the heart. I don't know if you'll do it with me. There's a challenge for you. I don't know if you'll do it. Might need the saw. Wonder if we can disarticulate that there instead. Just stop a second. Let me see if I can cut through there.
Jess, do you want a fresh knife?
Oh, what, sorry?
Fresh blade?
I think I'm all right, actually. Thank you. This is the trickiest bit. This is always the trickiest bit. Once we get inside here, we'll be able to see everything. And I guess that, that's the point of the rib cage, is to protect all of those organs that we're trying to see inside. So it's doing its job really well.
We've just had Antoinette, who's a vet student, saying, "This is great, thank you very much. You are welcome." We'd be doing it even if you weren't here, Antoinette, but it makes it all the better that you're enjoying it. Classic Sunday afternoon here for us, guys.
Could I just get there for a second? Sorry.
Get away. So as Jess said, when we have a look inside, we'll be able to see all the major organs. We can look at everything from the heart to the liver, from the respiratory tract. But it's just that first bit, because they're so well armoured, which is great for them, it's not great for us right now.
I'm sweating. Oh my days. Just be careful of that.
Yeah.
If I pull that, can you just cut through that connection there? Try not to cut me, please.
Yeah. Move your fingers in. Right.
There we go. That was the noise I was looking for. Fantastic. So do you want to try and do the same on the other side?
Yeah.
There.
What would you do?
And that's fab, Paul. We're all the way through those ribs there. Brilliant. You've stolen my knife. Oh, thank you.
That's absolutely brand new shot, that one. Leah, UEA bio student, how long can they go between meals?
Oh, I don't know. Do you know that one?
I know the generic answer is months.
Yeah, I couldn't
that
give
sounds
us
like a
the-
cop-out.
I know it's long.
But it's a bit of a cheat of an answer. Sorry about that.
It
but
also
it's-
depends what they eat, doesn't it?
That was the
Yeah.
It depends what they eat. It depends how big the meal is. Lots of reptiles can go up to a year. So some of the bigger African snakes and the bigger constrictors can go easily a year.
That's probably something easy that someone could find out, though, if anyone else wants to find out and give the answer.
Yeah. Actually, this comes right up here, does it?
So that will be exactly the same on the other side. If you look
Okay.
for that,
Right, I've got you.
that's essentially the collarbone there.
Yeah.
And then we should be able to lift the whole top section of this off. It's just so hard without damaging anything, isn't it?
And that's it.
That's looking really good under there, though. If we can do the same on the other side.
It might be easy if we can go from one side and hatch it all off.
Yeah, okay.
Are there any bits of dissections that make you squeamish, Jess? Because I've got one. But I want to see what yours is if you have one.
I don't love opening the large intestine.
Why is that?
Well, you wouldn't understand, Ben, because you don't have a sense of smell, but basically the
smell-
large intestine is just full of poo, so obviously the smell when you do that isn't great. Any bits I don't love? I really like the meticulous bits of the bits that we're doing now, really. I find it really sort of
Relaxing?
relaxing, yeah. And I was about to say it and then I was like, oh, should I say that? But
It is though, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
this is,
Repetitive.
some people do crosswords, some people go bird watching.
I don't love opening skulls to look at brains either. And one thing actually that I did once at uni, we were doing the forelimbs of animals and we had the opportunity to look at a human hand. And weirdly, I'm really human squeamish, even though I'm fine doing this to animals. I didn't like looking at,
Really?
which is not boding well for,
For Wednesday.
yeah, for Wednesday, exactly.
We've got Natalie from California, Hope in Canada. We've got Ben who's watching with their 12-year-old in London. We've got people all over. This is great. Thank you for joining us today, everybody. Hope you're enjoying it. Again, we will be taking the chest,
Oh, that's really good.
the rib cage off in a sec, I hope. Okay, for me it's parasites.
Oh no, I love parasites.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, even I think you're weird now, Jess.
That's not new though, is it?
No, I've always thought you were weird. Which, weird is good, kids, weird is good. Just the worms.
I love a worm, I love a fluke in a liver.
Oh, no.
Love it. But, you know, we did discuss I'm Mini Beast Girl, so...
You are a mini beast girl, yeah. I've had too many parasites.
Oh, I've had quite
I
a
think
few as
that's-
well,
That
Ben.
doesn't make you feel, oh, I just don't like it.
I once... I had a botfly. Well, I don't know if it was a botfly. It was some kind of creature that had made a home in my hand. And I was so excited. I know it's a bit of a weird thing to say. I could see it moving under. I was so excited to see what was going to hatch out. I didn't do anything about it because I wanted it to hatch out. I wanted to see what it was. I could not wait. This was in Bolivia. I was waiting and waiting and waiting. And then one day I woke up and looked down at my hand and there was just a hole. And it had gone. It had hatched while I was asleep. I actually cried because I was so upset. I wanted to know what it was. Maybe that was a story to keep to myself.
Maybe it was. If you
But
think
yeah,
Jess
no, I
is
know.
weird, let us know.
Yeah, I love parasites.
So I had mango flies in Africa, which is similar, and they all hatched out of my chest, and it was like lots of little versions of
but in
alien.
your chest maybe would not be nice.
And when I found I had them, I didn't want them to be in there any longer, so I spent a lot of time in getting those little fellas out of there. Ben, similarity between reptiles, cloaca, and a bird. Oh, good question. And Emma, hi from Cardiff. This is fascinating. Welcome,
Ah,
Emma from
good.
Cardiff, and Ben.
So
Is now a
Ben,
good time to talk about the cloaca?
or do you want to talk about it later? I mean, essentially the simple answer to that question is yes, they're very similar. And that's one of the other things that I find fascinating about crocodiles and alligators, is that they are sort of a boundary in some ways between a reptile and a bird. They share lots of things in common with birds, and they share lots of things in common with other reptiles as well, but they are their very own weird thing, and I think you're going to talk a bit more about that later, aren't you, Will? But yeah, they have the same sections as a bird, and actually largely the process of them forming their eggs and laying their eggs is very similar between crocodilians and birds. And they also lay hard-shelled eggs. So most reptiles have sort of rubbery, sort of almost not soft-shelled, but they're not hard like a hen or a goose. But crocodile eggs are very similar to a goose egg.
For the younger viewers, we have cloaca. What is it?
So the cloaca is this hole here. So basically, they just have one opening. That's where their eggs come out, their poo and wee comes out, and everything just comes out of this one hole. They just have one. It's just a common gastrointestinal and urinary opening. Amelie, age 10. Will its last meal still be in its tummy? Yes, it should be. If sometimes when crocodiles and alligators are at the end of their lives, they stop eating for a little while because they're not feeling well, in which case it might be empty. There definitely, I'm almost certain there will be something interesting in its stomach, which we'll get to at some point. And probably its last meal will be there as well. Depending when it ate will depend how digested it is. How are we getting on, Ben? We're nearly in there.
Oh.
I mean, that's looking absolutely fantastic.
Yes. We're nearly there, aren't we?
Yeah, I think we could just go through there.
Yeah.
I mean...
Do you want me to hold it up whilst you...
Yeah.
We're also trying to do all this from one side today so you guys can see, and usually we would go backwards and forwards, backwards and forwards.
Yeah, I think that's made it quite...
Just added to the fun today, isn't it?
Yeah. And we can reflect that right back if we...
Now again, remember that Jess and I and everyone here today absolutely loves animals, and we all prefer to see animals alive. But as Jess said right at the start of the dissection today, the opportunity to look inside an amazing animal like this is both really cool, but also it's a really important education opportunity. And we've already seen we've got lots of vet students, lots of university biology students. So if you are watching us today and you're not overly keen on this and you're wondering why we're doing it, it's a unique opportunity to look inside one of nature's most amazing predators and educate lots of people that we wouldn't normally be able to do this with. I put my blades on.
Right, so we need to be really delicate when we go through this bit now. And what we are looking for is what this is going to attach to, which is the lungs, and then the heart will be sitting just right in the middle. So now we're just going through the membrane that covers all of the abdominal and thoracic organs. So hot.
It's really warm and so, isn't it?
Oh, we've got more questions. How strong is the acid in the stomach? Can it easily digest meat? Yes, they're very, very, very good at digesting meat and bones. I think Will's going to talk, they have some special adaptations, which, oh, we're going to have a bit of juice now. Which we're going to talk about some of their adaptations to do with the stomach acid in a little while, but yes, essentially they are very, very good at digesting meat and bones. We'll talk about that more when we get to the stomach. Catherine from Paisley, what would you like to dissect next? Well, we do have another dissection, don't we, Ben?
We do.
Are we talking about that?
On Wednesday, we very luckily have an opportunity to look at why you as a human have the adaptations you do. So why we walk on 2 legs and not 4. Why we get bad backs. How's your back right now, Jess?
It's actually really hurting.
That's because Jess has evolved to walk on 2 legs. So we can best explain this through looking at our closest living relatives, which are chimpanzees. And we do have a chimpanzee who's again very sadly passed away from a British zoo that we'll be talking about on Wednesday. We're not going to be looking inside the chimp. She's already had her postmortem. We'll be looking at the external anatomy, the musculoskeletal system, and comparing it to other skeletons, such as a human, a chimpanzee, and an Australopithecine cast skeleton, to really explore that. I think the opportunity to look at something so similar to us, like a chimp, is obviously very upsetting still, in the same way that any animal, you don't want them to die. But again, it's a wonderful opportunity to really explore not only our closest living relatives, but also why we're like the way we are. And like Jess said earlier, the the basic body plan of so many vertebrates is so similar, we can learn a lot about ourselves from them as well. So, yeah, that's one that's going to be very interesting to do. But in terms of animals I've never dissected before, giraffe.
Oh yeah, that would be amazing, wouldn't it?
I'd love to look inside a giraffe, I really would. Just to see how it's all stretched out, because again, you'd see much of the same stuff, but the proportions would be weird and it'd be strange. They've got some crazy adaptations of their circulatory system in their necks, as you might expect. We've got 1 hour 20 left, Jess. We've been going for an hour and a half. Yeah.
Oh my days. Okay, we need to hurry up.
So, right.
We're going to try and get the heart and lungs out without...
I'm going to come that side of it.
Don't puncture that.
No, I'm going to just right to the ribs.
Sorry. Don't puncture that!
But I'm alright to go along there, aren't I? All the way along that side.
Yeah, so I can go through the esophagus here, and then that will separate the digestive system off. Yeah, that's really helpful, actually, if you go down there. So does that mean we've been doing this for 2 hours nearly?
About an hour and a half, yeah.
Oh my days.
Right, the hardest bit is done. So we can go in and have a good explore, can't we?
Mm-hmm. Just use the scissors. Oh, good.
What?
Just trying to. Yeah, perfect. Okay, there you go. Yeah, that one. Oh, these scissors are much
better. I've got a question, comment from my cousin William, who's saying Ben Nanny is loving this. Bet them a Dale, hey Nanny. And that's what I enjoy about this. This isn't just for scientists or academics. We can have everyone from grannies and granddads right down to, I know we've got some 3 and 4 year olds watching this today, so the opportunity to get involved with science is lovely. And I think a lot of people get worried that science isn't for them because they haven't got a brain the size of a planet, or they don't quite know what area of science to get involved with. But science is for all of us, isn't it? We can all get involved in some way, shape or form. Right, how are we coming with taking that all out?
Could you hold all of that up and then I will just snip underneath?
Yeah.
Yes, perfect, that's it. Yep, yep. What's that like?
Now, like we promised you earlier, there isn't blood spraying everywhere. That's the Hollywood movies, unfortunately, telling you all that. But we are cutting right into her thoracic cavity, or her chest cavity right now, and there's a little bit of blood at the bottom, but you'd expect that, but it's nothing much, is there?
Fascia there. Just don't want to puncture the lung because otherwise we won't be able to inflate them.
And so again, when you are doing this to quickly look through to see why it died, you're looking for parasites, you're looking for signs of disease, you can go much quicker, but as Jess said earlier, it's nice to do it nice and slowly and do it everything in a controlled way, but also we're trying not to puncture any of the organs because we have a couple of things in store, don't we, hopefully?
Yeah, that we want to try, but can you put it the other way?
My glasses completely fallen
I
off.
know, it's so hot. Just go through that. Yes, that's it. Okay, we're nearly there now. Good. All right, we're going to have the whole pluck, I think.
There's still quite an attachment down here.
Oh, is there?
Just feel my way in.
Oh yeah, there's a friend in there. Wow, look, you can see inside the whole ribcage. That's so cool.
See, that excitement is still why we do this, because it's like, okay, it's going to be weird. It's like Christmas, isn't it? It really is. I'm sorry. It just is for me.
Unwrapping our...
Yeah. And that's not disrespecting the animal, because I think it's beautiful. That the way this animal has evolved for a process lasting hundreds of millions of years is amazing.
Just lift that right up, that's it. Super, okay. Right,
quite
now if we can
slippery
just
as well.
separate, is it
Let's
really
swap sides.
slippery?
The whole.
Yeah, maybe. So what we're trying to get out now is the whole of the respiratory system. So we've got the tongue, the larynx, the trachea, and then in here, inside here, we've got the lungs and the heart as well. And it should all come out as one piece, which is called the pluck. So that's what we're trying to...
Now, why do we do that outside the body rather than inside the body? Wouldn't it make sense to do it inside?
What do you mean?
Why are we taking the whole thing out? People might be wondering why.
Well, it's just easier to look at.
Yeah. You've still got. I've got it exposed under here. There's some quite nice attachments to get off. Quite heavy as well, isn't it?
Yeah, probably the lungs have probably got blood in them, and the heart is going to be heavy as well. But actually you're holding the whole weight of the internal organs because everything's still attached to each other at the moment.
So
It would be nice to try and talk about the
Do you want to cut any of this
the
off?
heart and the liver for Will, but you can't really see it very well. Oh, under there?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Elijah 7, why do they have a cloaca like a frog? Well, that's a good question. The loss of the cloaca to have different holes, like we do, came further along the evolutionary path. So when reptiles, amphibians and birds were more closely related, it's an adaptation that they and their ancestors had that never really changed. And we've evolved to not have that. We've evolved to have different holes for different functions. But for them it works. It works absolutely fine. So a lot of vertebrates, animals with backbones, will have the cloaca system. Liz, what is the volume of the lungs likely to be? Liz, I do not know. Will,
No.
any idea? No? It's not a huge amount. Again, as Will talk about, they've got a very different respiratory system or method for breathing than we do. So they don't need that massive exchange of gas like we get on a regular basis. It's a much slower system and they can deal with much less oxygen content than we can. This is so heavy.
I just don't want to go through the lungs, but I can't see where the edge is because the fascia's so thick. Should I just snip through and... That just looks like fat.
Will, do you want to come in and cut? If you're happy with Will to cut along there. So
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
keen
yeah,
that
of
we need
course.
to- yeah, you can come in front, just as long as you can take some of that fascia out.
Okay.
As
A
I'm pulling it,
blade
you
might
can see where
actually
it's
be
at.
easier. Have we got another blade? Might be easier for this section. Perfect, thank you.
I think it's quite cool to mention as well that if you're thinking of being a scientist, I've talked to lots of kids about this, and I'm sure you both have as well over the years. There's an idea of what a scientist should do, and usually we think white man wearing a lab coat doing stuff, and I know I fit that bill right now, but I never wear a lab coat. Usually I'm usually in the wilds with animals, and I work with dinosaurs, and I work with chimps and polar bears, and I think the cool thing is that there is no clear definition of what a scientist should be. There's anyone watching today can be a scientist, is able to be a scientist, whether you're a boy or girl, black or white, rich or poor, old or young, it doesn't matter. Science is for all of us, and that's really important to remember that it's, I think.
Sorry, that's guts. Sorry, sorry,
Nearly in the face.
sorry.
Oh, okay. Got a bit of a nick there. Oh, okay.
I need some suture material. Maybe don't put so much pressure that way, bring it back this way.
Or should I put more pressure that way?
No, because it's because you're pushing on the stomach there.
Okay. Oh, right, okay.
It's coming from down there,
Right,
not
right,
from
right,
up
right,
here. Oh man. I can't even put a cable tie around it. Oh, I think it's just going to have to go into
That's
there.
all right.
Sorry.
No, fine. So we've just, as always happens, we're trying to do this nice and speedily for you, believe it or not, and we've just nicked the, I'm guessing
The
that,
top of the stomach, so it's the top of where the esophagus joins the stomach, and all of the stomach content, the liquid stomach contents are coming out. Sorry, guys.
Ah, it happens. So yeah, my profound point was, before stomach contents sprayed everywhere, science is amazing.
I wasn't trying to upstage
We've
you.
got more questions. James, what is the weight of lungs compared to humans? Much smaller. Much smaller. And again, will talk about that, the anatomy of the lungs in a little while. Our lungs are nice and spongy, and when fresh, they sit there
Just put this down again.
like a biological version of a bath sponge a little bit. And Antoinette, how many sternal or external ribs? I'll
Ooh.
count in a little while for you, Antoinette. I haven't
No, I don't know
counted
the
yet.
answer to that one. Just pop this down again. Oh, that's nice soup in there now. Oh, man. Just trying to do it neatly.
If this does start leaking everywhere, it's better to get it in.
The heart is just there. Yeah, maybe we need some sort of...
Got a bucket underneath.
Oh, guys, I'm so sorry.
Jess, I can guarantee there's at least several thousand young viewers right now going, yay! Trust me. Again, this isn't all blood. This is, as Jess said, this is stomach content. So it's not the blood going everywhere. It's what was left in her digestive system. And very luckily, we have got a bucket under the table. It's a very special table that we can have a look at later, maybe.
This fascia is just so thick, I can't see a thing. She's got some adhesions in here as well. Just trying to break it off the liver, but it's so attached.
Anything I can do?
Oh, there we go. Lift that up again.
Like that?
Yeah. Oh, we'll just cut the liver now. It's all so attached together. I wonder if it's normally this attached or if... Like, normally it should just come apart. I think maybe we're looking at some pathology here. Because look at that. That shouldn't be attached there.
Very often with captive animals, with zoo animals, historically, not so much nowadays, thankfully, with zoos, you do get a lot of what we call pathologies or changes that you wouldn't see in wild animals.
But also she's super old, so, you know...
But you don't usually, you don't usually see that with the crocodilians because they're quite inactive anyway, aren't they?
Yeah.
So it's hard to give them bad welfare if you're feeding them the right amount and the right food. But this is more than likely an age-related thing where the organs just change over time.
You know, I asked you for those cable ties to tie off the digestive system. We're not going to need them.
Cable ties, please.
Well, it's a bit late for that now, isn't it? So
You still want them?
I think that's kind of shutting the door after the horse is bolted.
Faye has asked, would there be any difference between wild and captive alligator? It's a difficult one to answer, Faye, in terms of how long they live, in terms of their body size, because as Jess was saying earlier, we haven't really been able to study these animals in the wild for a long enough period. So all the research that can be done, all the dissections, all the research in terms of their anatomy, in terms of their adaptations and their welfare is really, really important.
Where can we lie this out?
On this table.
Yeah. Wow, the tongue's actually really heavy.
Do you still want the cable ties, Jess? Then if you do.
No, I don't think so. Right, Will, would you like to... So here, we've taken out, this is the pluck. So this is the tongue, the larynx, down the trachea, these are the lungs here, and this is the heart. And then I think Will's just going to talk to us a little bit about the differences between crocodile hearts and those of other animals.
Yes, so Ben and Jess have been kind enough to let me join them. Hopefully some of my students from UEA first year biology are watching this stream. So one of the cool things they get to do in their first year of studying biology is to do a module where they compare between all of the history of life. So if you were to go to university, you get to learn about all of the ways like structures such as the heart and lung evolve. And Ben and Jess have been doing a great job of guiding you through the similarities and differences we see with other organisms. So one thing I want to point out is that the lungs are much more smaller and more simple. So if we looked inside them, they wouldn't have the complex system of tiny bags. You might know them as alveoli. They don't have them inside the lungs here. So the lungs are less efficient. And one of the things that you might have seen, so Paul did a great job of slicing through those ribs, but the way that reptiles breathe is by lifting their whole rib cage up and down. And that's how they fill these more simple bags that their lungs are with oxygen. And that's called rib cage ventilation. It's more complex than things like frogs. So they need to use their rib cages because frogs have the ability to breathe through their skin. Reptiles don't. They have these hard, bony skins like we pointed out earlier on. So they need internal lungs. And one of the systems we've been following through from the history of the whole vertebrates was the way that respiration has evolved. So before things had spines, internal organs for breathing didn't exist. And the way that oxygen was taken in from the environment was much more like fish do. So using structures similar to gills. Fish gills are the next step on that evolutionary story. And in the amphibians and then the reptiles, we see the internalization of gaseous exchange structures like the lungs. So the lungs are very simple. And then the heart in the crocodile is very cool. I'll try and get it out of it. So we can see it here. Borrow these scissors then. Yeah. So this is the crocodile heart. And the crocodile heart is very special within the reptiles. Volume up. I don't have a microphone. I'm supposed to be at that end. Thank you, Ben. So the reptile heart is very special because it has 4 chambers. So the way that the heart pumps blood around the body is by sucking the oxygen back in from the lungs, and that's blood that has oxygen that's been captured in the lungs. And then it uses this big muscular part at the bottom to push that out to the rest of the body. And I've actually brought a mammalian heart with me today. So this is the heart of a cow. And we can look inside this heart to see the structures that do this pushing. So you can see that the heart is very strong. All of this big red area is muscle. And you can see how thick the wall of the heart is in this cut here. So this is called a ventricle, this big chamber, and that does all of the pushing work, pushing rich oxygenated blood out to the rest of the body to allow it to do all of its work. So this big chamber is a ventricle, and the heart has 2 of those. You can see one at the back here and one in here. And the main blood vessel that comes out of the ventricle, this is the left ventricle, is called the aorta. So that's this big tube that carries this rich, important oxygenated blood to the rest of the body. So a mammalian heart like this is not too different to our own. It's obviously much bigger, probably wouldn't fit inside there. So the mammalian heart is about the size of a fist, but this is from an adult cow, so you can see the size difference. The cool thing about the crocodilian heart is that it also has 4 chambers, and no other reptiles have 4 chambers like that. They generally have 3, and they don't have a strong wall of muscle dividing the bottom 2 ventricles. And this is not less efficient. It's just a different strategy to survive. But crocodiles have a very unique ability to control the blood flow from their heart to different bodily organs. And I think we had a question from Jim's daughter, I believe it was, about the ability to hold their breath and breathe underwater. So the crocodile heart has a special valve at the top, has a very cool name. It's the foramen of
Panizza.
Panizza, that's it. I got it the wrong way around. The foramen of Panizza. And this allows them to switch between sending oxygenated blood out to their stomach, and instead they send deoxygenated blood. So this stops them wasting energy on sending blood to their lungs, and while they're diving, they can be much more efficient. And also, some scientists have suggested that by sending deoxygenated blood to their stomach, they're actually aiding the speed of their digestion. So right at the start of the dissection, Jess showed you the teeth of the alligator. So they grab prey, and they can hold it underwater to drown it really quickly. But also, if they have to dive underwater to digest that food, they can digest it much more quickly because there's a much different blood supply to it that they can control right from their heart. The other interesting thing about the four-chambered heart is that the only other organisms that have four-chambered hearts are mammals. And these come from a totally different branch of the evolutionary tree of life than the reptiles do. So we share a common ancestor about 300 million years ago, but since then we've gone on totally different trajectories. And yet we still have the same structure in our hearts, which is very cool. The only other organisms that have four-chambered hearts are the birds. And as Jess mentioned earlier, and some of the questions I've asked about, birds and alligators and the crocodilians in general are very closely related. And this is because they are the only living remnants of the archosaurs, a group of the dinosaurs. And as Ben mentioned at the start, they were the crocodilians particularly evolved before the dinosaurs, that huge radiation that we see in the fossil record. I don't know if you can actually get this out to see the aorta.
You just cut it off. The whole thing out, and then we'll just have the lens into the wall. Cut that one off there. So, and then you just cut across the vessels of your heart. Yeah. Keep going home.
So you mentioned earlier, Will, that they are able to digest as well. They can rewrite the blood within their systems in order to digest while doing other things, can't they? It's quite an ability to multitask.
Yes, absolutely. So we can see that there are lots of different channels of the this main blood vessel coming out of the heart, and closer to the heart. So inside here, somewhere is this special valve that allows them to switch the way that their heart is sending the blood out. So they can either send oxygenated blood out through two of these channels or through one of them. And if we compare with our mammal heart, we only have one blood vessel going away from the heart. So I can reach in from the ventricle and poke my finger out. I don't know if you can see that. So that's this big chamber pumping out blood to the whole of the body. And that allows the body plan to get much more big and complex because it has this high pressure system that recirculates blood from the lungs out to the body.
So we talk about ulcers, we talk about a fight or flight response, because very often if you're running, your stomach feels bad if you can't do both at once, whereas these are able to do multiple things then. It's a really good adaptation for a predator that sometimes needs to do explosive activity and other times sit there doing nothing for months.
Yes, absolutely. It's been suggested to be one of the reasons why they may have lasted so long, because they've got this ability to change how their whole metabolism works and really take shelter when they need to. And if they can affect the way their metabolism, the function of their whole body is working at this very first step, just as the blood is leaving the heart, they can be incredibly efficient. And that must give them advantages, saving energy for other parts of their life history.
Other things we've got here, these big flat flabby things that look pretty.
Yeah, so these are the lungs. I think you guys are going to try something special with them in a minute, so I won't cut into them, but I think if we looked inside them, we'd see a much less developed inner structure than the human lung.
What would you see if you managed to, you're a air molecule, you travel down past the tongue, down the esophagus, down into the trachea. What is the anatomy of your lungs, my lungs, and people watching at home? You said it's very different inside. What would you expect?
So do you like broccoli?
Yeah.
So you can imagine a head of broccoli. So inside a human or a mammalian lung, there are lots of small sacs that look pretty much like heads of broccoli. Lots and lots of them all throughout the lung. And these are designed to make the surface area, so the whole inner surface, much bigger, because they branch out again and again and again. So when you take a big breath in, you can fill all of those tiny sacs, and there's a lot of surface area for oxygen to pass into your blood and carbon dioxide to pass out. That reminded me about something I was going to say about the internal organs. So when you take a big breath, you feel muscles across the bottom of your chest contracting. So when you fill your lungs, your body's actually using its mammalian musculature to fill up the lungs. So we've had a lovely question from Ellen. So why is the heart of the gator much smaller than the cow? Firstly, the gator is much smaller than the cow across its whole body. Although this beautiful old lady was it 2.5 meters then?
Yeah.
Yeah, so although she's 2.5 meters long, and a cow might be similar in length, it's also got a much bigger body, so in terms of height and body mass. And also a lot of the cows that we've, that probably this part has come from, they're the product of farming. So we've gone out of our way to make them much bigger by breeding for bigger and bigger ones, and ones with lots of muscle. So maybe the hearts have gotten bigger as well to really push blood around that big, complex organism. But also the reptilian circulatory system and this small yet beautiful pump that is at the center of it it needs to be less efficient because mammals are warm-blooded, so they maintain the body temperature that they hold from the energy they expend in their muscles. Crocodiles, as Ben mentioned earlier, can go into this state of torpor, so they're taking heat from their environment and they're able to slow everything down. So the size of the heart might not need to pump as hard to get energy around the whole body. However, they're much more efficient than the much more simple hearts you see in another more simple branch of life, the amphibians. So we had a question about frogs earlier. Frogs are amphibians. So they'd have a smaller heart that's not got the number of chambers for like the reptile or the crocodilians and the mammals.
You mentioned earlier that when we breathe in, if you all at home, stand up. Right, stand up for 2 seconds. Stand up and put your hands either side of your ribcage here and take a nice deep breath in and release. You can feel the muscles, as Will said, along here under the base of your ribcage. And if you're studying at UEA, I'm hoping you know what the answer is there. It's your diaphragm. It's this wonderful thin muscle that sits at the very base of the ribcage. And I would like to show you that in the alligator, apart from one slight issue. They don't have one, do they?
Exactly. We'll have a look in the body cavity in a minute. But the ribcage is what is used to create the space inside the body to draw oxygen into these, to draw the air into these simple lungs that the alligator has. So the muscles you can feel contracting are your body's changing the shape of the cavity inside your chest to make your lung volume bigger and pull fresh air with new oxygen to take into your blood inwards. So we use our lungs as well because ultimately we have a similar set of organs inside our own bodies. But because we branched off at that point 300 million years ago, these guys have followed a very different path in terms of how they function. And the diaphragm is something that mammals have that the reptiles don't.
Just a very quick hi to some vet students, because we're really pleased you're watching. We've got Antoinette at the Royal Vet College, that's where I went to my Masters, and we've got Ryan from Bristol Vet School. Hi Ryan, I've got lots of friends in Bristol at the vet school there, so it's great that vets are watching. Now, my experiment where I got you to stand up very quickly and breathe in and feel here, you could all feel your diaphragm moving. Do the same again, I never said sit down, so you're still standing up. Do the same thing again, hands on your hips, like an 80s pop star. Great, I remember the 80s, just very young, but hands on your hips, put your thumbs just on the inside of your hips, and then breathe in again. Nice deep breath. And breathe out. I'm hoping you didn't feel anything in your thumbs, because no part of your pelvis is involved with your breathing. I hope that's right, yeah? We don't breathe with our pelvis at all.
No.
But if she was able, her little arms were too short, but if she was able to feel her pelvis, that's where her breathing comes from. The pelvis the pelvis of an alligator is involved in their breathing, isn't it? That's where a lot of their initial muscular controls come from.
Yeah, absolutely. So the whole stance of an alligator, the fact that they're much more erect. So unfortunately, she's not very fast on her feet at the moment. But one of the cool things about reptiles is that they stand up much more on their legs. So they have legs that are out at 90 degrees from their body, and they can hold their body off the ground if they want to move. And this allows them to interact with the environment in a much different way. So they're way more mobile, but also that means that the constraints on their body cavity are much different. And as you say, they use the whole of their, the bony structure of their whole abdomen, so from the pelvis and also the ribs, to create this change. So we still do that with our lungs. So when you took that deep breath like Ben asked you to, you felt your rib cage rise as well, and that's what our beautiful old lady would be doing. But also, yeah, she'd feel that through her pelvis as well to make this whole space expand and to draw oxygen into these lungs.
Okay, now I'm spitballing slightly here. We've got Antoinette from the Royal Vet College, and I mentioned John Hutchinson earlier. I know that John, who's a professor of biomechanics at the RVC, has done some amazing experimentation and research with crocodiles on treadmills.
Okay.
And they can, or crocodiles and gators, and they can gallop, can't they? And I guess in terms of these very fast terrestrial running animals at very short distances, and also this explosive speed coming from the water to ambush their prey, it's all coming from here when they're running out of the water, or when they're running. I guess it's almost like a ricochettal thing with kangaroos, that once you start moving, it perpetuates itself. Maybe it's the same thing with here. Maybe if John or anyone doing biomechanics can help with that one. I guess if you're sluggish in the water and suddenly you need to breathe a lot, well, it's a way of getting around that, I guess, isn't it?
So I think one of the things about this system of having different blood vessels coming out of the heart, they circulate oxygenated blood to specifically the tail and also the stomach. So I mentioned about the fact that it can aid with digestion, but you could be very, very much on the money if you're thinking about putting that energy, that oxygenated blood down to the really powerful organs, because I think crocodilians, as they can dash, you suggest, they also can use their tail to thrust out of water. So yeah, you could be very much right there. But I'll leave it to the Royal College of Vets.
If you know, let us know. Put a link on. Anyone's got a link to what John does with his galloping gators and careering crocs, please put us on there and show us. We've got 45 minutes left. I could do this for hours. Jess, what are we going to do in the next 45 minutes?
I've found some really exciting things while you guys have been talking. So
we might come back to this in a little bit, but we're going to pop over to Jess again.
Should we just quickly try and do our experiments with that while that bit is still there?
Shall we?
I'm quite excited about that.
Okay, let's do this then.
It's gonna work.
We're going to bring you over here for a second and ignore the rest of our gator for a sec. In the wild, as Jess mentioned earlier, they are one of the most communicative...
No, before that we're going to do that way. So we're going to try and inflate them.
Yep.
And then we'll do the other, because that's the other direction.
That's the other thing. All right. Okay. I won't tell you that in a second then, but I'll mention our little sneaky project in a bit. Do we need the pump?
Yeah.
So we've got a pump that we brought earlier, that Paul brought. Thank you very much, Paul. We might get this working. So Jess is inserting the pump down into the trachea.
So we're going to try and inflate the lungs first of all to see if that works, so you can see what they look like when a crocodile takes a breath. So, do you know how to do that?
Yes. So.
Not enough of it to see. No, we've nicked it, haven't we?
Can you nick, if we tie that off?
If we get a section of it, yeah, maybe.
Can we tie wrap? So we've nicked one of the lungs. It will manage to go completely.
So obviously when they're in the lungs, they're surrounded by a pleura, by a membrane, which means they're completely airtight. And so when the air goes in, it stays in. But obviously I probably have cut it as we've been dissecting. But maybe we could just do a portion. Go, go, go. Oh yeah, look.
A little bit there.
Anyway, you can get the idea that part of it is starting to inflate. Yeah, look at that. Wow. Amazing. Super
So if you
cool.
asked me earlier how big the lungs can get, it's this big. Can we do that? We've got one more little cut. Is there any way we can?
So I was a bit focused on my dissection. I was not entirely hearing everything you said, but I don't know if you talked about how they use them for buoyancy as well.
I didn't know.
So when the alligator or crocodile is laying in the water, they have really an amazing ability to adjust their buoyancy by using their lungs. So they can fill their lungs up to lift their head up, but then if they want to dive down, they can let some air out, which obviously will make their head tip down. Their head is really, really heavy. It does have some air pockets to make it lighter, but it's a really heavy part of their body. So the lungs, which are at the front end of the body, are used to fill up and lift that front portion of the body. So yeah, amazing. Crocodile lungs, amazing. Used for diving. They can shunt the blood away from them when they don't need to use them. Used for buoyancy. I've actually heard, I don't know if you've heard this said, that the circulatory and respiratory system of crocodilians is one of the most complex and interesting of all of the. Did you just say that? Sorry.
Well, no, you're totally right. You're totally on the money. I think it's.
And it's almost too advanced for how sedentary a life they have.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think Ben's the expert on fossils here, but there's not really a very good fossil record of the soft tissues of dinosaurs. Yeah. But one of the few pieces of circumstantial evidence is that crocodilians have a beautifully complex 4-chambered heart and circulatory system like this, and birds, which are the other relatives of dinosaurs that we know about, also have 4-chambered heart and complex circulatory systems. So I don't think we've ever found fossil evidence that that might have been the case in dinosaurs, but it could be related to a whole suite of physiology we see in ancient times.
And actually something you just said, something I've just found just now is reminiscent of something we find in dinosaurs as well, so lends even more to that.
There is evidence from dinosaurs of what we call pneumatized bone, so we have got things like some of the theropods, some of the big sauropods, because I know Harry will be going, Patagotitan had pneumatized bones. They know that some of these more basic animals, which is a horrible, I think, that reptiles and dinosaurs and birds, they're not as cool as mammals, actually, as you both say, have more complex systems sometimes, and we don't always know the answer why again. Should we try this one more time?
Yeah, one more time. The problem we're going to have with this...
We're not going to hear that, are we?
No.
we've got 45 minutes left, or 40 minutes left. We were going to try and do something amazing, but we don't think we can do it because this is quite noisy. But more importantly, between us, we've managed to nick the lungs a couple of times.
No, you don't need to. That's
do you not?
fine. You can just do it from here because it's going that way.
Of course.
But this will be too loud. We just need something to quietly make a...
I'm not blowing into the trachea. No, definitely not. My granny's watching.
What about blowing down the tube? No. Okay.
No, we're looking for a tube.
I'm not doing it.
I'll do it. Sorry, Nan.
Oh, you're going to do it?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Okay, right. Let's cut this off. So you can talk about communication now. What you were going to say before.
As Jess mentioned earlier, the crocodilians are one of the most vocally communicative of the reptiles, and that whole taxonomic group, apart from birds. But when they're in their eggs, when they're juveniles, they roar, they bellow, they squeak, they do a whole range of different things. And I'm going to, Jess, let you do it.
I think we're just going to see if we've got any thicker... Or cable tie, that's a good idea. Can we have a cable tie?
Can we get a couple of big cable ties, please? All of this material has been cleaned beforehand. It's all been sterilised, I know anyway. There are very few people who could get me to do this, and Dr Jess French is one of them.
Another one? So in the wild, alligators make this bellowing, roaring sound. Both the males and the females do it, and they use it. They often do it sort of around dawn, and it's used for lots of different reasons. They communicate for many different reasons, but often for courtship. And it's this incredible roaring noise. And as we said before, it's made by the larynx, the folds in the vocal folds in the larynx, which is very similar to the way we make sounds.
Hope has just said, "Be brave, Ben. You got this." Thanks, Hope.
So what Ben is going to try and recreate is the bellowing sound of the American alligator by breathing through.
How do I breathe? I'm going to sound stupid. Do I one big breath? Do I just
like,
breathe? Okay. Can you put your mic very close to that? Because it's only going to happen once, Jess.
Wow!
Maybe it'll happen twice.
That's that exact noise. So if you watch videos of alligators roaring, that is the exact noise, and you just roared like an alligator, Ben. High five. Cool.
Okay, who thought you were going to see that today in Norwich Science Festival? I didn't.
Nat wants you to do it one more time.
One more time?
Yeah.
Oh, I've got Natalie very sweetly asking to do it one more time there, Natalie. And what you can see is the vibration of that soft tissue there.
And actually, when they make that noise under the water water vibrates all around them. You can see
there's a
the
name for it, isn't it? It's like a dance or something. I can't remember what it's called. But if you Google, I don't know. I'm done. I'm out.
Sorry, I made it make a fart noise at the end. I ruined it a little
Again,
bit.
the kids have loved that. Don't worry. Don't worry.
Okay, so how much time do we have left? 30 minutes. Right. So let's go for the most exciting things. Let's do the digestive system next. So actually, for such a long animal, the digestive tract is pretty short. That's quite common among carnivores. So if you're a herbivore and your food takes lots and lots of time to break down, so if you've got leaves or grass, that takes a long time to get all of the goodness out of. Carnivores often have much shorter digestive tracts. And this is, I mean, the cloaca, however you want to say it, was not much further away from that, and this is the stomach. So that is the length of the whole stomach, small and large intestine. Now, stomach contents, everybody was interested to see if her last meal was in there. So we've got some, have a little look, see if you think you can determine what any of this stuff is.
Because also these, in zoos, the animals are given pieces of meat. So in the wild, you would very easily say, oh, there's a leg, there's a...
Yeah.
And actually, oh, that is a little lump that's been inside her for a while. So if you look inside, there's very old... So
is that a digestive tract of something else?
No, that's just a piece of bolus that's sat there for a long time, and it's not calcified, but it's... Sometimes in animals like this, very, very old animals that are quite sluggish, very often the reptiles, you'll get these little lumps that sit in there. So in mammals, they're called bezoars. It's like a bezoar, effectively.
And actually, did you know alligators can have hairballs?
From what?
So in some zoos, they feed them pigs, and the hair from the pigs, or I guess it's boar more, makes these sort of, hairballs, balls of hair in their stomach, and then they regurgitate them, cough them up like a cat.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Importantly, hang on. What is that?
That feels like a bit of pipe. I think she was chewing on something. Oh.
So there is a little bit of very old piping inside her. And again, this is not an indication of bad welfare at all. You get a whole range of different things that these animals eat typically in the wild, don't they? So they get these things called gastroliths, these little stones.
So that's what I'm grabbing here.
Oh, okay. So to help them digest, this leads in very nicely into this. They don't have the same digestive system we have. They need ways to help them digest and to do other things in terms of buoyancy, and Jess has very nicely led from that to this.
These are literally just stones. Stones that she will have picked up either from the wild, when she, from any of the zoos that she's been in, or, along her life, she's collected these stones, and they sit in her stomach for years and years and years. And they are just like the sort of stones you would find outside. There doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason to what sort of stones they are. But there have been records of alligators and crocodiles travelling really long distances to find these stones if there are no stones in their local environment. So there is a really important reason why they eat these. Scientists sort of disagree about what the reasons are. Some people think it's to do with buoyancy. So we're talking about the lungs being used to inflate and lift one end. Some people say this might be to do the opposite, so to help them to sink and to make that end of them go lower. It might have a part in digestion, so in birds, for example, in their crop.
Rolls around and
they
helps
roll
them
around
digest,
and that helps with digestion. But yes, these are gastroliths. And am I right in saying some dinosaurs also?
Yeah, again, we've found wonderful examples of sauropods, the big four-legged, long neck, long tail dinosaurs with very rounded gastroliths in where their stomach would be within the fossil site itself. What we're going to do, Natalie is very kindly, she's not offered yet, but she's going to help with a little competition. If you tell us your favourite bit of the dissection today and link in Norwich Science Festival with hashtag Gator Dissection, we're going to clean these up, and Natalie's going to send a few of them out, maybe the first 10, to kids who want a real-life gator gastrolith.
Oh my goodness.
10, yeah. So
Yeah,
hashtag Gator Dissection, link in Norwich Science Festival on whatever social media stream you're on. We'll have these cleaned up. That's Natalie's job this afternoon because she made me blow into a crocodile's mouth, an alligator's mouth. And we'll send you a real-life gastrolith. Tell your friends. Anything else we found in the stomach?
So no, the rest was just sort of digested. I mean, there was definitely food in there, so she was eating right up until the end, but nothing else.
Actually, with this, the zoo that we spoke to this from, this is what I was half expecting. They thought there was a piece of metal inside this gator, and they said from the moment they got it, it's been in there. So that's at least from the 90s, when this one inherited it from another place. That's been there for at least 30 odd years. Now,
Just
welfare
shows how
has
long
changed. Yes, we know that this isn't from
materials persist
well,
in
first
the
of all,
environment.
So we know that this isn't from the place that we were donated it from, her, but also, as Jess said, this does show just how long these can last in the wild and inside animals. And we're seeing lots of whales, especially at the moment, with plastic inside them, with birds, plastic inside them. So it does have a consequence.
Because this creature, she's eating whole carcasses sometimes. She can digest bone, she can digest really hard materials that are found in the environment. But in the natural system, the planet, the environment, animals have a way of getting rid of everything that they create. And that's why the system is so incredible. And this is why we are such a plague on the system, because we create things that the environment can't get rid of. It makes me very angry. Okay, now I found something so exciting.
How long have we got left, Nat? About 20 minutes, 25 minutes, loads of time.
Okay, so we know that this was a female alligator.
We do.
And we know that she was pretty old. And actually, I think someone had a question earlier. I think her name was Emily, if I remember. And I didn't read it out because I wanted to ask it when we came to this bit. She said, when do alligators stop being able to reproduce? At what age? And I kind of thought, in a very old alligator like this, we wouldn't see any evidence of any kind of reproductive capacity.
No. I mean, she's between 70 and 100. I
took away the digestive system and I found...
No!
So these are developing eggs, and these are eggs that were ready to come out and be laid. These are alligator eggs in her oviduct waiting to come out. Look, they're all lined up, going down to the cloaca. So that's the cloaca opening there. And that's, so the end of that digestive system, the colon opened into the cloaca, so that's where the poo would have come out, but also the oviduct opens down there as well, and we might be able to. Oh, I've crushed it. Sorry. No, I've crushed it. I thought I was going to maybe be able to make her lay an egg, but...
That would have been amazing.
Yeah. Never mind, we'll have a look at this one instead. So like I said...
so these are developing almost like fruit
follicles.
ready to become bigger. There's queuing up to develop more.
Exactly.
But these are fully...
They're ready.
They're quite solid.
Exactly. So most reptiles, they're sort of rubbery, aren't they?
Yeah.
Leathery eggs. But crocodiles... and alligators. Oh, I guess they've been frozen, haven't they? So that's probably why.
Yeah. Oh my
goodness! Should we have a look inside?
So this is actually a fascinating thing for my students. So one of the really important adaptations we see in the reptiles is that they're amniotes. So amniotes are the same as us in that they surround their developing embryo, the really tiny baby crocodile, just after fertilization happens. With a sack full of water. And one of the things that's dangerous about living on land is it's very dry. Because if you think about life evolving in the sea, where everything's wet, because it's the sea, one of the struggles on land is to keep things wet. And the tiny embryo suffers from that because it's so small. So the egg here is called the amniotic egg. And it's one of the key strategies that the reptilians used to break a tie with keeping water around their young. So if you think about the way that amphibians, like frogs, reproduce, they make frog spawn. And hopefully you guys at home have gone out and found frog spawn in the spring and maybe even seen tadpoles form from it. That's all tied and it relies on water. But the amniotic egg has a structure inside it which surrounds the water with surrounds the embryo with a watery sac. This is called the amnion, gives the name to the amniotes, which we are. So when women become pregnant, their belly grows out, and that's a baby growing inside, and that's surrounded by the same watery sac that's inside this egg, the amnion. So it's another cool similarity between mammals and the reptiles.
Do you want to have a go at opening it?
Okay.
Imagine if there was a baby.
Don't. I can't even imagine.
It feels quite frosty.
Yeah, I think they're going to have a lot of frost damage. Surely she wasn't old enough to... She was too old to...
So they don't go... There are very, very few animals that go through a menopause stage. Even within the mammals, there's killer whales and there's longfin pilot whales and us. So...
Don't some great apes also? No?
Not routinely, no.
Okay, so I've cut it in half. Don't know if we can zoom in on it. Oh no.
No.
So you can't see a baby alligator, unfortunately, but we can see some membranes. And these are the membranes that make this egg so special, and because they control how the egg interacts with the environment. So the egg is a living, developing baby, like any other way of reproducing, and it has to do things like breathe. And the membranes inside the egg control that process. So like this squidgy stuff, I imagine, is the yolk. So like a chicken's egg that you may have had for breakfast this morning. I hope Ben got at least an egg. He said he had a small breakfast. The yolk is what feeds the embryo as it develops. And the membranes inside the amniotic egg are very important because they allow the gaseous exchange to get oxygen to the developing baby inside. And also, when it starts to absorb this nutrients in the yolk, there are other membranes that control the excretion of the embryo. So that when it has to get waste products out, they will help it take it away from the bit that is developing inside and keep it separate. So it's a very cool and complex structure that's tied to exactly how they're able to be so successful on land.
Now, maybe she didn't mate with a male, maybe she was past her best, in the same way that my chickens, your chickens, don't always lay eggs that have been fertilised by Ronnie or one of your cockerels. This isn't indicative of bad welfare. Again, this is just a natural thing where a lot of eggs come out that aren't fertilised, and had she lived longer than maybe 2 or 3 might have done, maybe she had a big strapping boy alligator, then maybe would have had some little ones out there. But this is amazing to see. It really is.
I was so shocked to see them in there. Actually, I can't believe she's even still producing them.
No, and it's different to just sitting there. Again, these egg buds, as opposed to these were, as you say, ready to be laid.
So she was perfectly. She must have been very healthy to have been. Sorry.
Oh no, not at all. You were saying it's amazing that she is still healthy. I was going to mention one of the things that makes me excited about the crocodilians is that you mentioned about boys and girls coming out of these eggs. The way that crocodiles reproduce, they actually have temperature control over the sex of their babies. So they lay their eggs into a nest, and if the mother lays on top of it and warms up the eggs, it can change the gender of the babies that come out, the sex, not the gender. It's a way that they can adaptively make boys or girls to try and be more successful at producing subsequent generations of alligators and crocodiles in the future. And it's a very cool adaptive way of altering the population structure in the wild.
So I was reading, if it's as much of a couple of degrees difference, if it's about 34 degrees Celsius, it's male. If it's about 30, 31 or lower, then it's female. Which is great for the thermocontrol, as you say, to control the offspring. And they have these, so unlike crocodiles who dig specific pits, these almost make a compost heap.
Yeah, like a mound,
which they and this is where for some crocodilians we are seeing issues with climate change. So we are seeing, if it makes such a difference at just 1 or 2 degrees, then you can imagine as the world is increasing in its temperature, it's going to be harder for this balance of males and females in generations to come. So even that can affect these animals here. What an amazing thing we've just seen.
I know!
We've had a dead alligator fellow, we've seen eggs inside her, we've looked at the heart and the lungs, and this is really amazing. We've got just a few minutes left. How long have we got? About 5 minutes left. We've got 15! We've got loads of time!
Also, I was just quickly going to say about baby alligators while we're talking about this. Baby alligators are amazing in that they come out being really able to do so much when they first come out. I mean, they come out being able to grab food straight away. They'll grab any small little insect that runs past them, they'll eat that. They just look like tiny versions of these guys. They have the full set of teeth, they have the snapping jaw, they even have the egg tooth that helps them to get out of the egg like chicks do. Just, imagine anyway. Questions?
We've got a question from Oliver saying, first of all, he's loving this, and what is the largest gator ever found? Now, I want to look into this morning, Oliver, and it was really hard to find the answer. Natalie has given me an answer there which says 6.17 metres, which is all 3 of us in line, maybe even nearly all 4 of us in like head to tail, head to toe, head to toe, head to toe. That's a really big alligator. But there's a controversy there, because some people have hunted massive alligators and measured them and taken a photo and then it just washed away. Others have been measured by scientists, others have been measured by museums, and others have been measured just the skeletons. The longest that I can confirm that has been scientifically measured, Oliver, is I think 4.5 metres, which is again
That's quite a
still,
difference, isn't
yeah,
it?
yeah. So between 6 metres
Yeah.
and 6.1 and 4.5, sorry, still very big.
Yeah.
But they still don't compare to the biggest gators we have today. So things like the Nile and then the Salties are much larger, and you can get 5-6 metre crocs, which again are still tiny compared to things like Sarcosuchus and Deinosuchus that lived in the Mesozoic. So again, these look huge predators, but at some point there would have been things longer than buses walking around with eggs coming out that sort of size.
Oh, can you imagine?
Imagine the roar of those.
Wow.
We've got 15 minutes left. What do we do? What are we looking at?
Oh no, I don't know.
What do you want us to have a look at
Yeah.
first of all? Tell us if there's anything you want to have a look at that you've not seen so far. We've already mentioned everything from the heart right through to the lungs to the reproductive system. We tried to make an egg pop out, didn't quite work, but everything else has gone amazingly well so far. If there's anything you want us to have a look at in the next 5-10 minutes, please let us know.
Oh, yeah.
How have
That's
you
a question,
discovered
Jeff.
anything yet that may have caused the death of this
No,
animal?
everything has been amazing. In fact, let me just quickly have a look in the lungs, because sometimes they get lesions in their lungs, but no, absolutely everything has looked so super healthy. No, that tissue in there all looks...
Well, I can definitely say that's been there for at least 30 years. According to, we've got CT scans from this animal when she first arrived and X-rays when she first arrived to the place that donated her to us. So that wasn't the cause of death, and there's no obstruction there.
and she's obviously ovulating
She's
and
reproductively healthy.
cycling.
I mean, I had a grass snake earlier this year that some of you may have seen online that was egg bound, and she sadly died because she was egg bound.
But
There's no
no,
egg binding.
she's not
Her
egg-bound.
muscle quality is really good.
Really good. She'd been eating because she had some...
What would you look for infection? If she had swollen organs, or can you see infection? Can you see pus sometimes? Is there anything like that we could look at? Do you think?
Yeah, I mean, you'd probably need to do more looking at things with a microscope to determine that. You might see some sort of inflammation of some of the organs, but really everything has looked exactly as I've expected it to.
And again, it's hard.
I mean,
This is just. I mean, the muscle. When they get skinny and they start to starve,
Yeah.
you see really skinny tails. This is
and
a really
you sort of
healthy.
get saggy skin, don't
Yeah,
you? But
this is really. She's dead, but before that, she was really healthy. Right at that
Yeah.
last moment, it looks.
Yeah.
We've got a question that's come in: how big are the brains? And we're not going to take the brain out
No.
because the team who are getting her afterwards want it done in a very particular way, which we haven't got the saw with us today that we need to extract it. But in terms of brain size, it's very small, isn't it? You're talking the end point of your thumb, maybe a little bit longer, and it's
Yeah.
almost such. It's not this big, beautiful big mass, all these little
no.
undulations like ours. Oh, perfect.
So I asked Ben, as soon as he mentioned this, I wanted to get the brain
wow.
out. And he mentioned that it wasn't possible. So this is a caiman, which is much smaller crocodilian than the alligator, but the brain morphology is pretty similar. So you can see it sits up here in the top of the head under the huge impressive jaw that you gaped open earlier.
In fact, that's the bit that I was talking about, where the olfactory bulb, that's to do with the sense of smell, and that's what I was talking about. Sorry, I've just got...
Oh, it doesn't matter yet.
Alligator
This is
teeth.
especially for this occasion. I won't take it.
Yeah, so they actually use, as a proportion of their brain, quite a lot in smelling, so it's quite an important sense for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And the reptile brain is a really important one in this story of life that of vertebrate life that I'm exploring with my students, because the cerebellum, this part of the brain that is very important for the way that the human mind works, is much larger in the reptiles than we see in anything earlier than those. So amphibians and fish have very tiny cerebellums, and this structure is much more developed in the reptiles. So yeah, we can't show you the thing live, but I wanted to at least bring an image of what it might look like if we were to crack open the skull.
It's a very different shape to us, a very different set of priorities, as Jess said there. And the second part of that question is, how intelligent are they? We have to infer that. We can't give them the same sort of tests. I mean, our students, we've given tests. We're not going to sit her down before she passed away and give her a 2-hour math exam.
No.
It sounds silly, but very often we compare other animals to us, and that's not fair to do that. We've had the same issue with chimps and capuchins and other primates for years. And the same with reptiles as well, but we have to infer from their behaviour. So when Jess talked earlier about maternal care and she talked about hunting strategies, these aren't stupid animals. These are animals that can think.
The things they're capable of, and
Yeah.
the amount of time they've persisted for. I mean,
They can plan. They can plan ahead. They're able to cover themselves with sticks to improve their camouflage. Yes, they're not as clever as chimps, and they're not going to outwit a dolphin, but they're not stupid. They are, and I've seen recently. I've been googling lots of this, and I would never suggest do this. But there's lots of people in certain parts of America who have relationships with alligators, where they get in the water and have a pet alligator. And the alligator, I mean, this is incredibly dangerous and really stupid, I still think.
Yeah.
But the alligator does seem to go to that person and seems to have a recognition, the same way that my birds do and your birds do. But they seem to be able to recognise individuals. They seem to have this ability to not be mindless killers with a tiny brain. So I think that's, again, something that is hopefully will be explored as time goes on. Anything else? Oh, someone wants to look at the teeth very quickly again. Can we ratchet from this side this time to see if we can have a good look inside and see what the teeth look like? Okay. I'm not sure if we can preserve that, can we? Maybe. Now again, we mentioned earlier, if you weren't here earlier, that this is an example of what we call homodont dentition. So homo means same, dont means tooth, so same teeth. And other than, compared to ours, which is heterodont, got sharp little incisors and larger canines and then big cheek teeth around the sides. Oh, yeah. These are all roughly the same in their size and shape especially. And this doesn't allow for chewing and movement of the food. This is grabbing, gulping and twisting. We've got any idea what this is, anybody? Shout out if you know what it is. Giraffe. Heard you. Yep. This is a beautiful giraffe skull, and you can see there's different types of teeth at the front. You've got these lovely little incisors that nip, taking branches and acacia leaves, for example, and then these wonderful cheek teeth. Now, these aren't very different from one another. You get some premolars and molars that are very, very different. Things like cats, for example. But you can see the different types of heterodont teeth here, as opposed to this. So yeah, these teeth, as Jess said earlier, will grow throughout their lives. A little bit like a shark, they replace them, but not in the conveyor belt way, where a great white will lose one and then it's replaced days later. This is a slightly different process, where they don't have roots of their teeth like we do, and then it's almost like a Russian doll thing, where one comes up over another, over another, over another, over time, and they push the old, broken, slightly worn ones down. Yeah,
so somebody wanted to see the kidney, so that's what I'm just trying to find now. And somebody else asked, what is in the white tray next to the tail? So this here is the liver. You might want to talk about the liver and how they use the liver in breathing.
Oh yeah, so that's another part of the this process of expanding the chest cavity. So they have muscular attachments to pull all of their organs back as well. So it's the same. So maybe if you're looking inside there, you can see the intercostal muscles, which are the ones that join together the ribs. So you can feel those if you feel into your sides, and you can feel your rib bones, the hard bits, but the firm bits between them are the intercostal muscles, and that's what controls pulling the ribs together. But to expand the lungs, we've got to make all of this space where Jess is now dissecting bigger, and the liver is a big organ inside there, and pulling that back with muscular attachments allows the cavity to get bigger and more air to get into the lungs again.
Jess, liver, what does it do?
Basically filters out toxins. It has lots of different roles.
When you say that, sorry to jump in, when you say toxins, why would it eat toxic stuff? Is that what you mean?
So no, it doesn't necessarily eat stuff that is toxic as it is, but as we digest things, it's broken down into other things that can be toxic, and also things that are produced in other systems of the body. So basically it's a big filtration system. And also, I wonder if we'll find the gallbladder. If I cut that off with that, is it attached? Where else have we put this gut? Like a little tiny green sac. No, not on that one. It would be attached on there, attached to the small intestine. Oh, is that kidney? So I think let's bring this whole thing over. I was looking in there for the kidney, but it had so many adhesions, that's the only thing that I found that has been abnormal, is that everything has been way more attached to each other than it normally would. I don't know if that is just a crocodile thing, or if that is, an alligator thing.
I did it, so that's right.
Or if that is that kidney. So they don't have bladders like we do to store their urine. I think that might be kidney. That's a lot higher up than I would expect it to be, but maybe that. Let's have a look inside it. Oh yeah, that looks like kidney. So the answer to where was the kidney was I accidentally took it out with the digestive system, but it's there. Another question, was it always loads now?
Cesar has said, thank you so much, absolutely fascinating. Paula, this has been fascinating, thank you. Where did you all go to uni? My first degree was at Anglia Ruskin in Cambridge. My master's was at the Royal Vet College, and my PhD was at UCL. What did you do?
My zoology degree was at UCL, and my veterinary degree was at the University of Nottingham.
I did my zoology degree at the University of Sheffield. I did a master's in entomology at the Imperial College London, and I did my PhD here at the beautiful UEA, which is what led me to Norwich.
We sounded like we were on University Challenge.
Our special subject is dead alligators. And that's the cool thing. To get into science, there's no right way of doing it. We've all been to different universities, and some of us not everybody goes to university. There are some paleontologists who haven't been to university. We've got some wonderful lab techs who haven't been to university necessarily, and there's academics who've gone different routes. Some of my undergrads are teens, and my oldest undergrad has been 74. So there's no right way to do this, and the lovely thing is you can craft this to suit yourself, can't you?
And
Absolutely.
None of us know all of this on our own. It's a collaborative thing. We've all come in with our own expertise, and all of us, I'm sure, have learned a lot today just through doing this. So
I think you guys hit the nail on the head at the start as well when you said it's the excitement that's the important thing. And yeah, if you're thinking about going to uni, think about something you're excited in.
Yeah.
And if that's biology, maybe you'll end up with your hands inside a dead alligator at some point in the future, because it's very exciting.
This is what we do at UEA. We have 5 minutes left. We've got Sinead saying this has been captivating. Thanks so much, Will, Ben and Jess. This has been engrossing. The Curious Wilding. Thanks, guys. As we said, this has all been part of Norwich Science Festival. Things have been done very differently this year, but we wanted to bring to you the best possible taster, with, excuse the pun, of science over the next few days. Just to show you that, yes, this year has been weird, it's been sad, it's been terrible in so many ways, but we still want to bring you good science from good scientists and academics and other people who love science as much as you do. Please complete the survey. There's a link in the chat. And remember, if you want the opportunity to win one of these very lovely gastroliths that Natalie's going to clean up for us, then you need to use the hashtag Gator Dissection, link in Norwich Science Festival online, and tell us what you're loving about the festival so far. Like we said at the start, science is for everyone. We hope you've enjoyed this. This has been so much fun. Carry on with your questions. We'll try and answer some if we can. Link in with each other, and just over the next few days, just enjoy yourselves and really get to see what other fascinating activities we have for Norwich Science Festival. We'll also be doing an anatomical exploration of human evolution, looking at a chimpanzee on Wednesday, so link into that as well if you want. And all that remains for me to say is thank you to Natalie for organising today. Thank you for the team from Norwich live streaming services. They have been amazing today. Thank you so much, guys. This is, I think, possibly the weirdest job they've ever had. It's going to be changed on Wednesday. Paul and Catherine, who've been amazing today, and Will Nash and Jess French, who have been an incredible team. And thank you for being here. You've given up your Friday? No, your Sunday afternoon to witness what I think has been one of the most amazing explorations.
One final thank you.
Mhm.
Thank her.
Absolutely. And that's it. We do have to thank this amazing animal for teaching us. She has taught us so much today, and
she's taught you, she's taught maybe future alligator vets who are going to be able to help other alligators because of what they've learned. Just thank you.
yeah, thank you very much. See you again soon. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Have fun. Stay weird.